Hello and welcome to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Explore our playlist for more captivating novels, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new audiobook. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 21, Deadly Nine of Spades. This time, the chances of winning were too great. Shen Guangjun, who was already a big gambler, decided to gamble. Wu Chen didn't even look at the hidden card. He didn't believe that Wu Chen's luck would be so heavenly defying to that extent. Impossible, unreasonable, unscientific. Shen Guangjun walked out quickly, and Bao Wei followed. Of course, Shen Guangjun went to transfer money to get chips. The Crown Club did not accept credit. If Shen Guangjun wanted to get chips, he must transfer money on the spot. Of course, there was no transfer limit for the account of a big boss like him. Of course, if he won money, the chips could be directly exchanged for money when he leaves the Crown Club. In this regard, Li Ruotai was very reputable. The rules were fixed, and they will never be broken. Everyone in the box was waiting for Shen Guangjun to come back. The cards on the table had been covered, and the cards were temporarily sealed. Although there were people staring at them, and both parties were present, it was also a rule to seal the cards. Wu Chen put his hands on the back of his head and leaned on the chair. He suddenly tilted his head and said something to Li Ruobing in a low voice. Li Ruobing looked puzzled and looked at Wu Chen for some reason. Go get it, don't make a fuss. It's useful, just cooperate. Wu Chen laughed softly. Don't give me orders, Li Ruobing replied, but still got up and went out. In just a few minutes, Li Ruobing came back and sat down beside Wu Chen. Half a minute later, Shen Guangjun came back with a small tray in his hand, which contained 25 million chips. This time he brought a master to the scene and prepared a total of 150 million in principal, which he managed to raise and borrowed from others, but the master did not disappoint him. Once the chips started playing, they were never changed again. So he could still get the 100 million. There were 20 million left in the account. Shen Guangjun handed over 100 million chips to Yao Bin. Wu Chen pushed out all the chips on the table on his side and signaled to Bao Wei, who came back. Because of the previous rounds of betting, Yao Bin's final amount of stud was 80 million, including the previous rounds of betting chips. The total was only 90 million. Wu Chen followed his stud, which was 80 million, counting the previous rounds of betting. The total was 90 million. He added another 100 million. So a total of 190 million. However, he didn't have that many chips, only 150 million. Fortunately, Bao Wei took 100 million before. Although Wu Chen asked him to take it away, he didn't take it away and put it on the table in the corner of the private room. Bao Wei took the small box again. Wu Chen took 40 million chips from it, threw them away, and then pushed all the chips in again. I've agreed with your stud. Then add 100 million. Wu Chen said, the outcome is determined in one game, come on. Okay, with you. Yao Bin also pushed all the chips, and then he took his own card, stood up, adjusted his glasses and said with a smile, young man, you have to know, the most taboo thing about gambling is impetuosity. No matter if you lose or win, if you can't control your own mentality, you will go far. Wu Chen looked at Yao Bin, who was preaching with a smile. It felt like he was depressed before. Indeed, ever since he was cheated by Wu Chen once in the 11th game, he had been depressed. He couldn't win against Wu Chen, win small money and lose big money. He won 200 million and lost a little bit. How could he not be depressed? If he was won by a well-known gambling master, it would be justified. But he was won by Wu Chen, an unknown young man, so he was very humiliated. The time had finally come to unleash the cards. Actually, you are very talented, but you have all the problems of young people. You are a little clever, believe in luck, and have fixed habits when you play cards. It is easy for your opponent to see your flaws. Although there are many problems, but, if you are interested, you can go to the casino with me, and I can be your master. I will teach you. You don't even look at the hidden card. I have never heard of your playstyle. And it is probably only young people like you who do it. Come on. Although we both have the same big cards, how can you win against me? Yao Bin finally finished his long speech, and the god of gamblers didn't have as much talk as he did. Snapped. Yao Bin revealed his hidden card and threw it on the table. Diamond 9. I'm a pair of nines, not a big card. But your open card is the same as mine. If you want to beat me, you only need one card, 9 of spades. I really don't understand why you don't look at the hidden card. Yao Bin talked and laughed for a while, then propped his hands on the table, leaned forward, and stared oppressively. I don't believe that your hidden card will be the 9 of spades. You haven't even seen it. Are you betting on luck? Yao Bin finally ended his bullying words. Everyone in the box changed their expressions drastically. Stud game. When comparing the card size, first compare the card type. The card type was the same as the number, and the number was the same as the suit. For example, if two people had loose cards, and both had the highest A, then the ace of spades wins, and the suits from strong to weak were spades, hearts, clubs, and diamonds. And Yao Bin's cards were diamond 9, heart 9, diamond 7, clove 6, clove 3. He had a pair of nines. And Wu Chen also had 9, 7, 6, 3. In this case, if Wu Chen's hidden card was any non-repeating card, it was a loose card, which was naturally not as big as a pair. The card was just a high card. Therefore, if Wu Chen wanted to win, there was only one card left, the last 9. 9 of spades. If Wu Chen's hidden card was the 9 of spades, then both of them were a pair, and both of them were a pair of 9, which could only be settled with the stronger suit, the spade. This was why Yao Bin was so confident. There was only one card for Wu Chen to win. The only chance. But when two people play cards, the probability of all 4 nines coming out in one game was too low. If Wu Chen had seen the hidden card before, then Yao Bin might have thought about it, and re-raised after seeing the cards. He thought he would win and bet normally. An act of luck. Yao Bin didn't think Wu Chen had such unnatural luck. Everyone present realized that Wu Chen's odds of winning were already lower than winning a lottery ticket. Li Ruotai suddenly looked very bad. He didn't blame Wu Chen. After all, Wu Chen also won first and then lost when he lost. In general, Crown Entertainment lost more than 200 million yuan today, of which only 40 million yuan was lost by Wu Chen. The responsibility did not lie with him. He was blaming himself for not stopping his brother-in-law, who seemed to be reliable but was not so reliable. The last hand was so big. What kind of luck did you bet on? Ha ha ha, Mr. Li, your Li family has a great career, and you won't be angry if you lose a little money. Shen Guangnian patted Li Ruotai on the shoulder and said with a big smile. Li Ruotai's shoulders shook, and he shook Shen Guangnian's hand away. Are you finished? Wu Chen, who had been leaning on the back of the chair with his hands behind his head, finally spoke, looking at Yao Bin and still smiling. Let's play. Yao Bin smiled lightly and made a gesture of invitation. Then, I'm sorry. Wu Chen sat up straight, pressed his elbow on the table, and picked up his hidden card with 2 fingers. He didn't look at it himself, but showed it to Yao Bin directly. It's a 9 of spades. Crack. Wu Chen threw the cards on the gambling table. Yao Bin's pupils contracted violently, and his face lost all color in an instant. A needle drop could be heard in the box. Everyone was stunned. Wu Chen stood up slowly and said lightly, You really think that I don't look at the hidden cards? Did I say I don't look at them? Chapter 22. Get cheated, chop your hands. Everyone present knew that if you don't look at the hidden cards, raise with stud, and only one card could make you win, it was very unlikely that you would bet on this card just by luck. But what Wu Chen said when he stood up made them seem to understand something. The cards that were already there and the cards that were gambled by luck were 2 different things. For example, in the case of the fried gold flour, in the case of a stuffy card, if you throw money in it desperately, the fastest card was leopard, and after looking at the cards, you throw money in it desperately, and the last card shown was leopard. Those were completely 2 concepts. The former was heaven-defying luck. The latter was also lucky, but there was nothing wrong with his playing style. It was not to gamble on his own luck, but to know that he had a leopard card, and it was normal to spend money like crazy and want to win more. You read the cards. It's impossible. When did you look? Yao Bin suddenly shouted sharply. The gentleman lost his composure completely, his eyes were bloodshot. If he lost this round, he already lost. Why do you think that from the first round to the 38th round, I straightened the cards before deciding whether to look at the cards? Why? Wu Chen said while moving the chair. Walk out. You are a veteran of the casino. Yes, you have rich experience. Empiricism is not wrong. The mistake is that you are too conceited. Do you really think you can understand my style of play through just a few hands? What if I did it for you on purpose? Yao Bin stared wide-eyed. Although Wu Chen didn't make it clear, he understood. Wu Chen's seemingly obsessive-compulsive habitual action of twisting the hidden card and facing him directly was intentional. It was at the moment when Wu Chen twisted the cards in his hand that he saw what the hidden cards were for the first time. In fact, when it came to gambling, Wu Chen didn't believe in luck at all. There was luck, but in front of gambling masters, luck played too little role. Wu Chen had been looking at the hidden cards since the first game. Sometimes he looked at the last ones, which was actually a kind of deception. In fact, he had already seen it and knew what his own hidden cards were. But his technique was too clever, too fast. No one could tell that Wu Chen had seen the hidden cards, including Yao Bin, a top player from the gambling city of Australia. From their point of view, Wu Chen just put the cards crookedly on the gaming table and straightened them up. For 38 consecutive rounds, Wu Chen did this all the time. Originally, I thought that if I didn't take the initiative to create opportunities for myself when I didn't spend $1,000, then I would have to wait for a chance to kill you. It might take at least 50 rounds of waiting, but now it seems that I am lucky. My luck is indeed pretty good. It was dealt with in round 38. Wu Chen walked around the gaming table as he spoke, and walked in front of Yao Bin. Li Ruobing also followed behind Wu Chen. Yao Bin's eyes were still staring like a bull, his eyes were flushed with blood, and his whole body was trembling a little. For a gambler, losing a big one time was not terrible, but the way he lost this time was very scary. Do you really think that I believe in luck? Wu Chen tilted his head and looked at Yao Bin with a faint smile. Do you really think that the flaws in my style of play and mentality are really flaws? Is it really my habit? Or, do you think that I like to take risks when I cheated on you once before, so I still cheat on you this time? You still want to be my master? Want to teach me? Are you worthy? You think I'm younger than you, don't you? Wu Chen didn't spare his teasing and sarcasm. This was a boss. Yao Bin already understood that since Wu Chen played the first game at the table, he had been planning this game. It's a lie that he didn't look at the hidden cards. He believes that luck was fake. His habitual little moves were fake. His aggressive fraud was fake. It was to pave the way for the last card. It's all fake. Yao Bin couldn't recall how he got into Wu Chen's trap step by step. His mind was in a mess right now, like a paste. All he had left was regret. Regret why he followed the last hand. Why did he agree with what Wu Chen said, both sides raising 100 million? He already understood. It wasn't that Wu Chen was lucky, not at all, he was the one who waited for the cards in the 38th game. There would always be situations where Wu Chen's cards were bigger than his, but how to use them and how to maximize their benefits was the key. It was Wu Chen's 37 rounds of cards that laid the foundation for him to kill Yao Bin in one fell swoop. Small cards could also win big money. In Wu Chen's 38 rounds of cards, he didn't wait for any particularly big cards. Big cards like straight flush and four of a kind would not be played easily. But Wu Chen beat Yao Bin's 190 million with a pair of nines. The size of one's own card really didn't matter. As long as it is bigger than the opponent's, that's enough. But this time, Wu Chen not only won Yao Bin's money, but he also destroyed Yao Bin's self-confidence as a master of gambling. In fact, Wu Chen didn't want to be so ruthless. Everyone is the master, without any grievances, but Yao Bin broke the rules. Wu Chen stood in front of Yao Bin, and Shen Guangnian was one step away from the side. At this moment, Boss Shen's complexion was uglier than that of the whole family who died. and his forehead was covered with sweat because he had no money and owed a lot of money. He had already lost all the company's cash last time, and the principal he used to this time was all borrowed. 150 million lost 130 million, leaving only 20 million. 20 million was meaningless. Even Yao Bin was no match for Wu Chen. He knew that he couldn't make money with the remaining 20 million yuan. And the 20 million yuan was not enough to pay off the debt. It was a very scary thing for a company that had no cash flow. Even if it was a company with a scale of 100 billion yuan, if its cash flow collapses, it might collapse. Not to mention that Shen Guangnian's company's market value was only a few billion. Big trouble. Boss Shen, Yao Bin slowly turned around and looked at Shen Guangnian stiffly, not knowing what to say anymore. He was invited by Shen Guangnian with a lot of money, but he lost. Big lost. Shen Guangnian's face gradually turned gloomy. He knew that he was played by Li Ruotai again, but he was in Li Ruotai's territory, so he couldn't get angry at all, and he didn't dare to say anything harsh. Although he knew that Li Ruotai would be finished in a while, now, Li Ruotai was not finished yet. Let's go, we'll talk when we get back, Shen Guangnian said in a heavy voice. Before leaving, he gave Wu Chen a vicious look. Yao Bin followed behind Shen Guangnian to go out. Wait a minute, it's not over yet. Wu Chen raised his eyelids and shouted. The bodyguard directly blocked the door. It was Li Ruobing's bodyguard. What do you mean? Shen Guangnian, who was already agitated, suddenly exploded. He glanced at Wu Chen, but shouted at Li Ruotai, Mr. Li, we lost money on your matter, so why don't you let us go? Why still keep us here? How much do you want me to lose? Your Li family is too crazy, right? Li Ruotai didn't know what was going on and turned to look at Wu Chen. Why not let him go? Wu Chen didn't speak but approached the two of them in a few steps, then grabbed Yao Bin's left forearm, and said, Don't move. Yao Bin was stunned for a moment, and then he reacted violently like a rooster with fried hair struggle. What are you doing? Let me go. Let go. He couldn't break free. Wu Chen grabbed his left forearm and shook it vigorously. A playing card was thrown out of Yao Bin's sleeve. Dropped to the ground, face up. It's an ace of spades. Everyone's complexion changed, and the eyes they looked at Yao Bin were not right. Before the 35 rounds of cards were dealt, you asked for a card inspection, took the opportunity to steal the ace of spades, and kept it in your cuff. Do you really think I didn't see it? Do you think I'm blind? I didn't expose you because I haven't won against you completely just yet. Wu Chen stared at Yao Bin and said, You broke the rules. Do you know the consequences? Yao Bin was terrified. Wu Chen's right hand was still pinching Yao Bin's left arm, and while speaking, his right hand gestured backward. Li Ruobing took out a short knife from her coat and handed it to Wu Chen. Wu Chen violently pulled Yao Bin to the table, held down his left arm, raised the knife and dropped it. Poochie. Cheating. Chop hands. Chapter 23. Do you also know art? When the others were still immersed in the astonishment that Yao Bin was cheating, Wu Chen didn't even hesitate. He very suddenly and quickly pulled Yao Bin to the table, and chopped his hand off with a single strike. The knife was what Li Ruobing asked for when she went out to find the bodyguard. After the card was shown, Wu Chen asked her to get it. At that time, Li Ruobing didn't know what Wu Chen was going to do. If he really wanted to play some dangerous tricks, she was carrying a gun, why bother with a knife? She was still very against Wu Chen's behavior of ordering her, but she still went to get it. Now, Li Ruobing finally understood why Wu Chen wanted the knife. This was a common casino rule all over the world, whether it was gambling on a cruise ship on the high seas or in an underground casino. Yao Bin only felt himself being pulled violently by Wu Chen. His body immediately lost its balance, staggering and almost falling, and then he was in excruciating pain. Ah, my hand, ah! But Yao Bin stopped screaming immediately because when the pain reached a certain limit, he would be numb, and his whole body would be completely stunned by this pain. Wu Chen really chopped it. Yao Bin's left hand left his body forever. Some drops of blood splashed on Wu Chen's clothes, and there was also a little on his face. Clang clang. Wu Chen casually threw the bloody knife on the gambling table, raised his hands up, and looked down at himself. There was some blood on his blue suit and white shirt, mainly on his hands and face. Who has tissue paper? Wu Chen asked very flatly and gestured to his surroundings. He was too calm, as if he wasn't the one who chopped off the hand. The calmer he was, the more intimidating he felt. He's not pretending. He was used to it. In the Millennium Reincarnation, he spent a period of time diligently studying gambling skills to pass time. He had been in and out of large and small underground casinos in Donghai and also had conflicts with people. He was chased by dozens of people for more than a dozen streets in the middle of the night. Anyway, there was no need to think about the consequences, everything would be reset, so during that time, Wu Chen was really lawless. He took the initiative to find excitement. What scene had he not seen? This was just a trivial matter. It was Li Ruobing who dug out a tissue from her bag and handed it to Wu Chen first. Bao Wei, who was 2 steps late, had already picked up the tissue box and wanted to hand it over. Seeing that the eldest lady handed over the tissue first, he quietly put the tissue box back. Wu Chen wiped his face with a tissue, wiped his hands, and then cleaned the blood spots on his clothes. Seeing this, Li Ruobing turned her head and whispered a few words to the bodyguard behind her. Actually, you don't need to play tricks at all. You can't beat me. If you cheat, you either don't do it or don't get caught doing it. If you get caught once, your life is over. From 35 rounds to 38 rounds, a total of 4 rounds. Although Yao Bin stole an ace of spades, it was useless. Cheating and matching cards could only be useful if they matched the cards in hand, so Yao Bin after stealing cards was also waiting for the opportunity. In fact, Wu Chen could imagine Yao Bin's state of mind. When he first came to the Crown Club, he never thought of cheating, until he met Wu Chen. Before the cards were dealt in the 35th round, Yao Bin happened to have 100 million left in his hand. Although on the whole, he still won money, he could no longer control the situation and was constantly losing the money back to Wu Chen little by little. He couldn't stop him. Chen Guangnian hired him with a lot of money, so he naturally made a promise, not only to win back the 300 million that Chen Guangnian lost before but also to win more. That's for sure. He realized that it was impossible for him to win Wu Chen without spending $1,000, so he took the risk. He didn't know that any of his superb techniques, in Wu Chen's eyes, were all clearly displayed, and they couldn't fool Wu Chen at all. Yao Bin was already lying on his side on the ground, pinching his left wrist with his right hand. His face was pale, and he was trembling. Bleeding so fast. If he was not treated in time, he would die from blood loss and would not survive for more than a few minutes. Originally, according to the rules of the casino, the amount of money played today is so large, it is not enough to cut off one of your hands. It should at least be both hands and feet. However, you are just playing cards with me today, and I am not in charge. I will not make things difficult for you. After Wu Chen finished speaking, he stopped wiping his collar, threw away the bloody tissue, put one hand in his trouser pocket, and turned his head to look at Chen Guangnian, who was leaning against the doorway wall, already trembling. Chen Guangnian's face turned pale because he was frightened. Although it wasn't him who got his hands chopped off. But Yao Bin was brought by him to play cards for him. It's impossible for him to pick it up. Boss Shen, what do you say? Wu Chen asked Chen Guangnian and smiled. A habitual smile, but in Chen Guangnian's view, it was a devil's smile. Me, it's none of my business. I didn't let him cheat, it has nothing to do with me. It's his own idea, I don't know about that. Chen Guangnian crazily defended, sweating profusely, and then plopped down on his knees. Mr. Li, you know that I am a human being. Although I, old Chen, like to gamble, I never cheat. It really has nothing to do with me. Shen Guangjun grabbed Li Ruotai's trousers and shouted almost pleadingly. He didn't even dare to ask Wu Chen, because now he felt that Wu Chen was more terrifying than Li Ruotai. He would chop off people's hands, and he looked like he hadn't done anything after the chopping. You deal with it. Wu Chen gestured to the situation in the room and said to Li Ruotai. I'm leaving first, he said and walked out. When passing behind Li Ruotai, he tilted his head and whispered in Li Ruotai's ear, "Don't settle Shen Guangnian in the clubhouse, take him away." Li Ruotai nodded. He didn't know why he suddenly listened to what his brother-in-law said. Anyway, he just listened. Wu Chen and Li Ruobing left the 9-5 box, and Li Ruobing's bodyguards also left. On the way to the elevator, Li Ruobing naturally held Wu Chen's hand, and the bodyguards followed behind. "Does it feel good to chop off people's hands?" Li Ruobing asked softly. "I don't feel it," Wu Chen said and glanced at Li Ruobing with a smile. "You don't feel it?" Li Ruobing's expression became very subtle, and her gaze at Wu Chen was even more subtle, full of unique curiosity. She felt that she might have encountered some unsolved mysteries of the world. Because she couldn't figure him out. This person Wu Chen claimed to be an intelligence businessman. Okay, she trusts him for now, but Wu Chen could also gamble and even beat top players. Had he practiced? He also said that cutting off people's hands didn't feel like anything, and he was very calm. Intuition told Li Ruobing that Wu Chen had killed people before. Women's intuition was usually pretty accurate. In fact, everything about Wu Chen was abnormal, the information that was almost fortune-telling, the calmness and stability, the unique skills, and even the ruthlessness. The reason why these abnormalities made people feel abnormal was that Wu Chen was too young. In his early 20s, it was impossible to have too rich life experience. "It's not like I chopped off my own hand." When entering the elevator, Wu Chen said again with a smile. Going back to the 11th floor, instead of going to the room where Li Ruotai and Zhao Guaizi met, they entered a large suite. Very large, but very elegantly decorated large suite. Judging from the photo frame on the coffee table and the artistic photos on the wall, this should be Li Ruotai's private suite. "Your brother is quite tasteful. Kui Rujuo's lotus is quite interesting." There was a picture of a lotus hanging on the wall next to the entrance. Wu Chen paused, looked at the picture and said with a smile. "He has a fart taste, and he only shows it to the important clients he brings over. How can he understand these things?" Li Ruobing was indeed Li Ruotai's sister. "Do you know about artwork? Do you have research on painting?" Li Ruobing turned her head and asked again. "I understand a little bit," Wu Chen said humbly and then raised his hand to signal the painting on the wall. "The painting is fake, and the real one should be in the hands of a collector in Shangjiang." After speaking, he walked inside, randomly turned around in the living room and looked around. The elegant decoration style was full of a false sense of a sample room. As Li Ruobing said, this was for receiving important customers, so the decoration was very elegant, but it was not used. There was even a Steinway piano by the window in the living room. If Li Ruotai could play the piano, he would be damned. "It's just decoration. I have asked the bodyguard to get clothes, and they will be delivered later. Would you like something to drink?" Li Ruobing walked to the wine cabinet and asked while talking. "Dom Perignon P2, 2000, thank you," Wu Chen said casually. Li Ruobing, who had just opened the door of the wine cabinet, turned her head and frowned slightly, with a slightly surprised smile on her face. Because what Wu Chen said was her favorite champagne. Li Ruobing was not used to serving people, but for Wu Chen's performance today, she felt that pouring Wu Chen a glass of wine was nothing, it was considered a reward. Just as Li Ruobing was pouring the wine, Wu Chen sat in front of the piano, opened the key cover, first slid his hand on the piano, and then started to play. Soothing and beautiful piano music played, melodious. Chapter 24. Are you flirting with me? The interlaced black and white keys gave birth to beautiful notes and moving melodies, just like the sun at 2:30 in the afternoon, lazy and leisurely, flowing slowly along its ancient and elegant arc. The sound of the piano gradually became brighter, overflowing like a tide, filling every space in the whole world. Fingers danced briskly on the keys, sliding from the bass to the treble, blooming into a rose-like beautiful scenery, and then gradually falling from the treble, like pearls scattered all over the ground, fine but shiny. Wu Chen's fingers kept stroking the keys. His body swayed slightly with the rhythm, his eyes narrowed slightly, half open and half closed, as if the whole person was intoxicated by the moving melody he played. Holding a glass of champagne in both hands, Li Ruobing walked silently to the piano. She leaned gently and put the champagne in her left hand on the top cover of the piano, within Wu Chen's reach. Gently sipping the champagne, Li Ruobing brushed her chin with the back of her hand and tilted her head to look at Wu Chen, who was intoxicated by his performance. The clear sound of the piano gurgled. Li Ruobing looked at Wu Chen's eyes, and there was a unique light. She had to admit that Wu Chen was beyond her expectations every time. In her 27 years of life, she met many unique men, and Wu Chen was definitely the most unique among them. Now, she didn't dare to say that there was anything Wu Chen can't do. Although Wu Chen didn't show too much, Wu Chen could do amazing things at the right time and on the right occasion. In fact, the piano pieces that Wu Chen was playing were very famous. So famous that almost everyone knows it. Because this classic piano piece had been used by major domestic TV stations as background music in various variety shows, news programs, and film and television programs. Although not many people know the name of this piece, once they hear it, almost everyone will feel that it's familiar. There was a bad thing about being too familiar, and that was boredom. Even if it was your favorite song, if you set this song as the alarm clock or the ringtone of your mobile phone, you would get tired of it in less than a year and never listen to it again. If you listen too much, you will get bored with it. It would feel tacky. However, the appeal of the pianist playing the repertoire could not be replaced by a device. Wu Chen was not a pianist, so he didn't have such a title. But Li Ruobing, who has also learned piano, could tell that Wu Chen's piano level was very high, at least far higher than her own. Li Ruobing, who was tilting her head, stroked her hair and hung a strand of hair behind her. When she tilted her head, her hair would hang down to cover her face, so she stroked it. Wu Chen didn't look at her. His level of concentration when playing had reached the point where he could ignore everything around him. Even Li Ruobing, a beautiful woman who could reach 9 points of beauty under strict standards. Li Ruobing took another sip of champagne, exhaled slowly, closed her eyes, and seemed to be listening attentively. She hadn't been so relaxed in a long time. There was no intrigue in the business war. There was no coercion and pressure from the family. No work, no worries. Only intoxicating music. She didn't know how long it has been. The piano sound stopped abruptly. Li Ruobing opened her eyes as if awakened from a dream, looked at Wu Chen and said, "You are really versatile. Richard Clayderman's Poems for Adeline is pretty good, why don't you play it?" Wu Chen didn't finish playing, and there should be a short section behind. Clang, clang. Wu Chen pressed the keys a few times in succession, and said, "This piano is a bit out of tune, you should be able to hear it." Li Ruobing pondered for a while. To be honest, she didn't hear any of the notes that were out of tune. Wu Chen underestimated himself and overestimated Li Ruobing. Li Ruobing learned piano and passed the grade test when she was a teenager, but she hadn't played it for too many years, and Wu Chen, who knew how good his skills are, he didn't know it himself, because there was no comparison. Li Ruobing rarely felt this kind of embarrassment, and she didn't care too much. She raised her hand to signal, "Your champagne." Wu Chen got up, picked up the champagne, and shook it lightly. "Cheers, cheers." Ting. The two touched their glasses and took a sip. "Are you flirting with me?" Li Ruobing looked at Wu Chen again and asked. She had a smile on her face, but it was a half smile. Speaking directly and very outspoken. "Why do you think so?" Wu Chen asked Li Ruobing with a smile. "You are an information businessman, you said it yourself. I believe you, because you know too many things, and I also believe you know me, so, you chose the champagne I like. You know I have learned the piano, so you played the piano. There may be some misunderstanding between us." Wu Chen laughed. "Boss Li, please don't be too narcissistic. We are in a cooperative relationship, aren't we? You gave me 20 million, that's why I came here today. I've always been serious about clients. If you think this is flirting, that's on you. So, you're treating me as a client. You're just making your customer comfortable. Is there any problem?" Would you put on a serious face with your business partners? You are happy, I am happy, everyone is happy. Then, I can have more money. That's right. Li Ruobing seemed to really believe Wu Chen's nonsense and nodded with a smile. Boom. Knocking. It was the bodyguards who brought the clothes. Because there were blood stains on Wu Chen's clothes when he was in the box, Li Ruobing ordered the bodyguards to buy them. They bought 2 sets at a time, and it was estimated to cost hundreds of thousands. The bodyguard came in with a suit in his left hand and right hand. Li Ruobing asked Wu Chen to choose, and Wu Chen chose a silver-gray one. Wu Chen went into the bedroom to change clothes, and when he came out again, he saw that Li Ruotai had come over. It seemed that Shen Guangnian's matter had been dealt with. It's noon, let's go eat first. Li Ruobing greeted him and said while arranging Wu Chen's clothes. There was a restaurant in the Crown Entertainment Club, but the 3 of them didn't plan to eat in the club, because there was nothing delicious there. No matter how exquisite the food in the club was, it couldn't compare to a professional restaurant. In the end, the 3 came to a Western restaurant in Midtown. Li Ruobing was a member and had a seat at any time. The 3 of them ordered casually in the private room on the 2nd floor and only started chatting while waiting for the meal. Brother-in-law, what do you think? How should I deal with Shen Guangnian? Li Ruotai asked softly. This, brother-in-law, was now easy to say for him. Before Wu Chen told him not to touch Shen Guangnian, he said not to make a move in the clubhouse, so Li Ruotai let him go, but he knew that this matter must not end like this. Shen Guangnian was not touched because it was really troublesome to do something about him in the clubhouse. It's not Wu Chen's trouble, but Li Ruotai's. He's in enough trouble now, so he needed restraint. He has lost so much money, and the business operation has gone wrong. Wu Chen arranged the tableware, arranged them, and said without raising his head. Is Shen Guangnian innocent? In fact, he is not innocent at all, because he was related to the Wei family. The number 3 member of the Wei family was once Shen Guangnian's father-in-law. The Li family and the Wei family were immortal, so, since Wu Chen chose Li Ruobing as his first contact, he must be towards the Li family. I understand. Li Ruotai nodded. No need to ask for too much detail. He had too many ways to deal with a little character like Shen Guangnian, but he didn't know which one was the most suitable. In this important period, he was also afraid that he would screw up. Brother-in-law, about closing the store, Li Ruotai asked again. If you're willing, set fire to the Crown Clubhouse. Wu Chen raised his head and said. Li Ruotai was shocked, and so was Li Ruobing. Both siblings looked at Wu Chen. Burn. The decoration of the Crown Clubhouse alone cost 500 million yuan. Burn. Just burn a little bit. It's better to be on the news, so that you can suspend business for rectification and redecorate reasonably, and no one will doubt you, Wu Chen said. Afterwards, Wu Chen told Li Ruotai how to do it. It was mainly a matter of timing, when to steal evidence, when to kill Xiehu, and when to burn the clubhouse. The sequence must never be wrong. I'm going to the bathroom. After Wu Chen finished speaking, he glanced at his watch, got up, and said. Can you find it? How about I? Li Ruobing asked with concern. It's okay, I know where it is. Wu Chen pressed Li Ruobing's shoulder. Just after Wu Chen left the private room, Li Ruotai turned his head and looked at the closed door. Hearing the sound of footsteps outside fading away, he was sure that Wu Chen had really gone to the bathroom. He turned around abruptly, and said in a low voice to Li Ruobing, Sister. Who is this guy? Where did you find him? What? Although he called him brother-in-law, Li Ruotai still had great doubts about Wu Chen. Chapter 25. Aren't you contradictory? In fact, Li Ruotai's suspicion of Wu Chen was not because he doubted whether Wu Chen was really helping him now. There was no doubt about this point. Because Li Ruotai knew how big his problem was, he understood that those evidences would put him in prison directly, and he might even die in prison. If Wu Chen wanted to harm him, he didn't need to do anything, he would be finished. Therefore, Li Ruotai now believed that Wu Chen is going to help him tide over the difficulties. But he still doubted Wu Chen. What he doubted was, who exactly was Wu Chen? Did Wu Chen have some big conspiracy? He appeared out of nowhere, and the information Wu Chen provided him, as well as Wu Chen's personal abilities, made him unable to understand. Wu Chen had given him an extremely mysterious feeling. Everyone would be curious and skeptical about unknown things, so Li Ruotai's suspicion of Wu Chen showed that he was a person with normal thinking. There was no doubt that he was not a fool. Snapped. Suddenly there was a crisp sound. Li Ruotai covered the top of his head, wanting to get angry, but didn't dare to get angry. Because it was his elder sister Li Ruobing who hit him with a Western food spoon. What about this guy or that guy? Aren't you being impolite? He is your brother-in-law. Li Ruobing frowned coldly. In fact, she also doubted Wu Chen, but the drama of loving couple still had to go on. Yes, it's brother-in-law. I just want to ask, brother-in-law. Sister, what is the origin of brother-in-law? Don't try to lie to me. He can't be an ordinary college student, and he's not a bad boy. I'm your own brother. Don't lie to me. Li Ruotai changed the question. Why are you asking these questions? Li Ruobing asked. In fact, she couldn't answer, so she had to not answer. She couldn't say that she didn't know, so she had to trick him. I care about you. Don't you think he has a big problem? You are afraid that you will be cheated by him. He is definitely not an ordinary person. You don't need to worry about me and your brother-in-law, you should take care of yourself first. I've told you 800 times, don't hang out with Xiehu. If it wasn't for your brother-in-law, you would have killed. Yes, it's my fault that I believed Xiehu's evil bastard, but sister, don't change the topic. He's good to me, he's good for you, what else do you want to ask? I have a question. Li Ruotai was really anxious. Because he felt that the old lady didn't seem to understand what he was talking about. Do I not know what your brother-in-law and I have experienced? I can't tell you about him in detail. I warn you, don't mess around. Your brother-in-law and I will handle our relationship well. Li Ruobing had already started talking nonsense. What did you go through? Is it a big deal? Why don't I know? Li Ruotai asked. You're still asking. Li Ruobing stared. In fact, she was also feeling stuffy in her heart, because she really didn't know it herself. They never experienced anything, and they just met today. She knew nothing about Wu Chen, and even suspected that the information on Wu Chen's background that had been found was all fake. Li Ruotai didn't dare to ask because of the deterrence his elder sister had formed towards him since childhood. Okay, I won't ask too much. Anyway, don't cry when you are abandoned by him. Li Ruotai said, jumped up immediately after speaking, and hid 2 meters away. Li Ruobing looked at his younger brother coldly and sat there without moving. Li Ruotai, who deliberately hid himself, thought that the elder sister would come and beat him directly, so he jumped after speaking. But Li Ruobing seems to know his tricks. Come back, sit down. Your brother-in-law will be back soon. Li Ruobing gave her younger brother a threatening look. Li Ruotai came back and sat down, looked his elder sister up and down again, and asked, Sister, are you really pregnant? Li Ruobing looked at him and was silent for a while, then said, Don't talk nonsense to the family. If there is any information about this in the family, don't blame me for whipping you. In fact, Li Ruobing didn't answer whether she was pregnant or not. However, what she said gave Li Ruotai the feeling that she had acquiesced. Hey, let me tell you this, I will definitely not let the old man know. He will hurt you, Li Ruotai said. This was the reason why the relationship between the siblings was so deep. Li Ruobing was always worried about his younger brother. And Li Ruotai always thought about her sister. Sister, tell me, should I give my brother-in-law some money? Li Ruotai asked again. What will he do with the money? Li Ruobing frowned. Brother-in-law won the money. Li Ruotai continued, apart from the money back, brother-in-law also 130 million won for the casino. Although the gambling money is the principal of the casino, but wouldn't I look too stingy? Li Ruobing rarely agrees with Li Ruotai's actions, which were mostly illegal. But this time, she thought her brother was right. She also admitted that although she was a businessman, compared with her younger brother is obviously much better than her in terms of interpersonal communication. In fact, from a logical point of view, it didn't matter whether Li Ruotai gave or not. Because Wu Chen gambled with the money of the casino, winning or losing was the casino's, not Wu Chen's. He had no risk, and Wu Chen was Li Ruotai's brother-in-law. In name, what big reward was needed for helping his family? That would be unreasonable. But Wu Chen didn't want it, and whether Li Ruotai offered to give it was two different things. Li Ruotai knew more about human relationships than Li Ruobing. After all, he was a gangster. Whatever you want, you decide. Li Ruobing said. You are quite strange. Li Ruobing said amusedly again, while doubting your brother-in-law. You want to give him money at the same time, aren't you contradictory? If he becomes a problem, I'll also give him a big one. Li Ruotai said, his words very quack. But, he does have a lot of problems, don't you think? He is a very godly person, and he is still so young. Li Ruobing was noncommittal. Hey, Li Ruotai sighed when he saw the old lady's attitude. Forget it, I don't bother with you. In the bathroom on the second floor, Wu Chen washed his hands and wiped it, then left the bathroom, wanted to go back to the private room, passed a corridor intersection, and just as he turned around, he suddenly frowned. He pretended to pick up the phone and glanced at it. In fact, the screen of the phone was black and the screen was reflective. He used the phone as a mirror and glanced behind him. He sensed that someone was following him. Or rather, spy on him. Chapter 26. Me. Wu Chen. From an ordinary family. Wu Chen was very puzzled. At this moment, why did someone start to follow and monitor him? His new life just started today. Although he experienced a lot of things today, in terms of the speed of news dissemination, no one should be eyeing him at this time. Ding Ruolong. Ding Ruolong was not a god, it was impossible to know his existence now. At least a few days later. Why was he being followed and monitored? Could it be Li Ruotai? Arranging for someone to spy on him, even when he went to the toilet. It's not right to think about it. Li Ruotai wouldn't do such a stupid thing, and his cronies wouldn't be so bad that they would be discovered easily. Wu Chen thought about his footsteps but didn't stop. It's more important to eat. His life was lifted. He had to enjoy it and not treat himself badly, although being watched might be something. It might even be dangerous. But, it didn't matter. Wu Chen didn't think that there would be a sudden situation that he couldn't handle, otherwise, he would have lived like a dog in his 1,000-year reincarnation. Just after Wu Chen returned to the private room and closed the door, at the corner of the corridor, a man wearing a peaked cap looked around, glanced at the door of the private room, then took out his mobile phone and made a call. Hey, brother, where is he? Lunch with Mr. Li and Miss Li. Keep watching, be careful, don't be found out. Yes, don't worry, brother. By the way, brother. If you want, I can eavesdrop on their chat. Are you so crazy? If Mr. Li finds out, you will be fed to fishes tomorrow. Just follow carefully and see where he ends up. In the private room. What are you talking about? Wu Chen pulled the chair and sat down, and asked with a casual smile. We're about brother-in-law. Li Ruotai answered immediately, feeling that he was a little more polite than before. Brother-in-law, I haven't asked you yet, are you from Donghai? Yes, from the county below, from Ning'an County. Wu Chen replied in a chatty tone. As soon as Li Ruotai opened his mouth, he already knew what Li Ruotai meant, it was just a cliché. Li Ruobing knew it too, but she didn't stop him. In fact, she also wanted to hear what Wu Chen would say. In the county, do you live in the urban area? I live in the old street of Dongcheng district, in Yue community. Huh, the old city. It's all old houses. Brother-in-law, with your great skill, you didn't buy a better house. No, the old house left by the family is pretty good to live in. The old house left by the family. Li Ruotai repeated Wu Chen's words. He found a loophole, took a moment and said, Brother-in-law, didn't you just say that your family is from Ning'an County? Why is there an old house in the city? There was a problem with that logic. It's our old house. Wu Chen raised his head and smiled. My father and mother, when they were young, just got married, and went to the city to work hard together. My father is a cook, and he can make ramen and stir-fry vegetables. My mother has a higher education level. She was an accountant. That was more than 20 years ago, and the house was also cheap. They saved money for several years before they paid the down payment and bought the house with a loan. After that, before my grandfather passed away, he had been in poor health for many years. After my grandma passed away, my parents decided to take care of the elderly. At that time, they wanted to set up a store in the city, but they didn't have enough money, so they just went back to the county. It is convenient to open a store in the county and take care of the elderly. Then, this house in the city was rented out for several years, and the house price kept rising, so they were not willing to sell it until I went to high school, Donghai No. 1 middle school. I moved back here then. Wu Chen didn't mind talking about his family affairs. He knew that with Li Ruotai's power, it would take him a minute to find out. There was one point worth mentioning. That was to say, Wu Chen traveled from a parallel universe, and he became himself in a parallel universe, so, in fact, his parents, relatives and friends in this world were the same as before the time travel. Emotions were naturally the same. Although the life experience was slightly different, they were the same. After listening to Wu Chen's simple narration, Li Ruotai only had 2 words left in his mind: ordinary. Too ordinary. It's so ordinary. Wu Chen's parents, more than 20 years ago, also had passion in their hearts and came to the big city hand in hand. Like many people in that era, they wanted to work hard to have a better future. But fate always played tricks on people. They worked hard to buy a house in the city, but due to various reasons, they were forced to go back to their hometown in the end, resigned to their fate, and lived a stable life. Wu Chen was an ordinary person who came out of an ordinary family. No wonder. Li Ruotai didn't believe a single word of what Wu Chen just said. Liar. Ordinary people could know so much information like fortune-telling. Ordinary people could gamble better than the top players from the casino. Ordinary people cut off hands without blinking an eye. In fact, Wu Chen didn't lie. Yesterday, that was, before July 7, 2020, he was an ordinary person. If he hadn't passed July 7 365,000 times, then he would still be an ordinary person today. Brother-in-law, did you live alone when you were in high school? Didn't your uncle and aunt accompany you? Li Ruotai asked again, unwilling to give up. No, Wu Chen continued, I also have a younger sister who is 5 years younger than me. Someone has to take care of her. The ramen restaurant at home can't be closed, so she has to live with them. I was 15 or 16 years old at the time, so there was nothing wrong with me living alone. I pay living expenses, I won't starve to death. What is there to be afraid of? Li Ruotai still didn't believe it. Whoever believed that was an idiot. It couldn't be so ordinary. At this moment, the more ordinary Wu Chen described his family situation, the more problematic Wu Chen seemed to Li Ruotai. He would definitely investigate Wu Chen, and Wu Chen also knew that Li Ruotai would definitely investigate him. However, check it out. Wu Chen was not afraid of being investigated. If Li Ruotai could really find out where Wu Chen lied and concealed some great background, then he would really be damned. But it's all true. Brother-in-law's gambling skills are really good. Li Ruotai complimented Wu Chen first, and then said, who did you learn from? Brother-in-law, can you tell me? Nothing comes to mind. Wu Chen said casually. This sentence is a lie, but, except God, no one could find out where Wu Chen's gambling skills came from, because the time when he learned gambling skills had long since been reset. How did the brother-in-law know those things? Li Ruotai asked again. Refers to that information. This has to be kept secret. Wu Chen smiled mysteriously. Okay, how about you check the household registration book? Li Ruobing said, not allowing Li Ruotai to ask, because the question was too much. Li Ruobing knew that Wu Chen was an information businessman, so he definitely couldn't say it. Boom! There was a knock on the door, and the door opened without a response. It was the waiter who came to serve the food. French Western food, steak, foie gras, pumpkin corn soup, and some desserts. They had a very pleasant lunch, and they chatted a little while eating, so they got to know each other better. After the meal, the three of them left the restaurant together but got into different cars. Wu Chen and Li Ruobing went straight back to the Symphony Fashion Company, while Li Ruotai wanted to go back to the Crown Club. Wu Chen, who was sitting in the back row of the Maybach, first tilted his head to look at the rearview mirror, then turned his head and looked out the rear window. Li Ruobing didn't know what Wu Chen was looking at, so she also looked back. There were a lot of cars on the road, and there were bodyguards, cars behind them. It seemed that there was nothing to see. What? Can't bear my brother. I can't see him because he's too far away. Li Ruobing teased. With her character, she wouldn't tease people unless she was familiar enough with them. In the past half a day, the relationship between the two could be said to have progressed by leaps and bounds. Nothing, Wu Chen replied with a smile. In fact, he discovered that there was a car following him. And he already knew who was following. In the corridor of the restaurant before, that person was wearing a peaked cap. Wu Chen couldn't see his face clearly, so he didn't know who it was. But people may be good at disguising, but cars were not so good. Wu Chen was too familiar with Donghai. He recognized the very low-key black Volkswagen that was following behind. The bodyguard sitting in the front co-pilot suddenly pressed the earphone of the intercom, listened carefully, and replied in a low voice, "I see them." Then he turned to Li Ruobing and said, "Boss, a report from the car behind. There is a car following us." Chapter 27. You and that liar. Li Ruobing's trusted bodyguards were not ordinary people, they were all retired special forces. The annual salary of her bodyguards alone was several million, but the money was not paid by Li Ruobing, but by the Li family. No matter how big the conflict with the family was, Li Ruobing was also a core child of the Li family, the granddaughter of the head of the house. Even if the family members were out of their minds, it was a family matter. To the outside world, the safety of the Li family would never be sloppy. It wasn't just Wu Chen who discovered the stalking. Li Ruobing's bodyguards also found out, and they had anti-reconnaissance capabilities. However, Wu Chen directly judged who sent the follower, but it was impossible for Li Ruobing's bodyguards to know. Get rid of it. Li Ruobing just said the words. She was used to it. With her status, she had been followed not once or twice, especially in the past 4 years. That bastard Ding Ruolong often sent people to follow her, especially when Li Ruobing went out alone. He seemed to want to know everything about Li Ruobing. Ding Ruolong was indeed a very controlling person. Almost perverted. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. The convoy started to accelerate. Li Ruobing frowned slightly. She was a little annoyed, because someone was following her. She thought of Ding Ruolong, and then she thought of the pressure from the family, and the bet. To be honest, in fact, Li Ruobing was not absolutely sure that she was better than Ding Ruolong in terms of business achievements. Li Ruobing also thought about finding a different way, but it seemed not easy. Wu Chen suddenly grabbed Li Ruobing's hand, interlocking his fingers. Li Ruobing turned her head to look at Wu Chen. She had lost her previous smile and her gaze was gloomy in an irritable mood. Wu Chen, however, was smiling, seeing Li Ruobing looking over. He said, "Ruobing, don't worry, your brother will be fine, everything is up to me." The word, Ruobing, is like a signal, which meant Wu Chen was acting. There were also drivers and bodyguards in the car, although they were all Li Ruobing's people. Li Ruobing said that she would deceive everyone, so it's okay to act in the car. But Wu Chen said this kind of thing at this moment, it felt very delicate. Everything is up to me. Li Ruobing was touched. Wu Chen was not a god, but he knew Li Ruobing well. He could really guess what Li Ruobing was thinking just now. For example, he knew that Li Ruobing misunderstood that the car was sent by Ding Ruolong. Within half an hour, the team returned to the Symphony Fashion Company located in the 7th seat of the CBD. Wu Chen officially went through the entry procedures and became the assistant to the president of Symphony Fashion Company, with a monthly salary of 20,000. Afterwards, Li Ruobing personally took Wu Chen around the whole company, pretending to be familiar with the company, but actually telling everyone that Wu Chen was her boyfriend. Li Ruobing held Wu Chen's hand all the time. She seemed to be no longer that cold and domineering female president, and beside Wu Chen, she smiled a lot more. Nanchang District, Qinghe Courtyard Villa Community, Villa No. 5. You son of a bitch, you finally answered my call. You dare to turn off the phone, you really forget your friends. It's your fault that Mu Qianchen stood by the window and yelled into the phone. She was really pissed off. She didn't get through to her best friend's phone all morning, and she also knew that her best friend's boyfriend came back, and the two of them must have done something wrong, but her best friend arranged for someone to play with her. Then, she turned off the phone the next day, which was too much. Qianchen, listen to my explanation. I didn't turn off the phone on purpose. The phone is out of battery. I forgot to charge it yesterday. I slept until noon. How would I know? Stop talking nonsense. Come to my house quickly. I have something to ask you. Mu Qianchen hung up after finishing speaking. 20 minutes later, Mu Qianchen's best friend arrived at the door. She was greeted by the nanny downstairs. They all knew each other, so they let her in and went upstairs. Boom! Mu Qianchen, who was nestled in the room, heard the knock on the door and greeted in a very bad tone. The door opened, and a girl stood by the door. The girl looked average, but her skin was very good. She was full of jewels, and she wore a luxury item. She was Mu Qianchen's best friend, named Wan Li, who was also 18 years old this year. Her father, Wan Zhanman, was the boss of Donghai Wanman Biochemical Group. The best friend of a rich family's daughter, of course, couldn't be an ordinary person, and only in the same circle could they hang out together. The Mu family and the Wan family were family friends. Mu's biopharmaceutical group and Wanman Biochemical Group were business partners. Mu Qianchen and Wan Li had known each other since childhood, grew up together, and went to the same elementary school, middle school, and high school. Feeling very good. Qianchen, don't make a bad face, are you really angry? Humph, you forget your friends after seeing sex. Oh, stop talking nonsense. Why is it so urgent? I want to ask you. Mu Qianchen was very serious. Did you arrange for someone to approach me yesterday and play with me? Huh, who is it? You're still pretending. I am not pretending. What someone? You, that Wu Chen, you didn't arrange for him. What Wu Chen? What did I arrange? Mu Qianchen knew her best friend well, and she knew that even though her best friend liked to joke, when she asked so seriously, she would not admit it. So, Mu Qianchen briefly talked about what happened yesterday. Of course, some things were hidden. The key point was that Wu Chen claimed to be reincarnated on the same day, and he also accurately stated the time when Wan Li called. Wan Li was frightened. Qianchen, do you believe this kind of liar? Wan Li looked in disbelief after hearing this, and couldn't believe that her best friend was so stupid. You even stole other people's cars with him. Really, you didn't arrange for him? Mu Qianchen asked. Of course not. Am I that bad? Wan Li asked, throwing her bag on the cabinet with her hands and sitting down. Then she frowned because she saw a box of medicine on the table. She picked up the box of medicine and looked at it. It looked like it was newly bought and opened, so Mu Qianchen should have taken the medicine. Jin Yuding was written on the box. Wan Li was a wilder girl than Mu Qianchen. She had her first boyfriend at the age of 16. In the past 2 years, she changed boyfriends more often than she changed clothes. She had also taken this medicine, so she knew this was an emergency avoidance medicine after the event. Give it to me. Wan Li just looked at it, and Mu Qianchen snatched it back, looking very nervous. Wan Li turned her head to look at her best friend with wide eyes, stood up abruptly, and said, "Did you sleep with that liar?" Yes, yes. Mu Qianchen stuttered. She knew that although her best friend liked to play, she was different from her. Her father was strict with her, so she never talked about a boyfriend, saying that she would wait until she went to college or something. In fact, Wan Li didn't care about this kind of thing. If her best friend had a boyfriend, then it's fine. But listening to what Mu Qianchen said just now, Wanli felt that her best friend was cheated on by a liar, and she was cheated in one fell swoop. You, are you a fool? Wanli was very weak, and Mu Qianchen was fine, but she was furious. What's his phone number? Call him. Mu Qianchen blinked her eyes and said nothing. Wanli was shocked. You don't even have his phone number, do you? I forgot to ask. Mu Qianchen whispered. Wanli covered her forehead. She had a headache. Wu Chen stayed at the Symphony Fashion Company all afternoon. Although he was just a name and didn't need to work, he had to put on a show on the first day, familiarize himself with the environment, get to know people, and even participate in a company meeting. After 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the two left the company together. This time, they didn't take Li Ruobing's Maybach. Li Ruobing had a lot of cars. She changed to another Bentley Continental and drove by herself. Wu Chen took the co-pilot, and the bodyguards followed. They drove a Mercedes-Benz G. Although she was a female president, she always had her own life. Where to eat? Li Ruobing put on her seat belt, turned her head, and asked Wu Chen. Go. Wu Chen really thought about it, and then asked Li Ruobing, do you mind if more people know me? The more the better. Li Ruobing said. Lao Pin Zan. Wu Chen said. Lao Pin Zan, the top Cantonese restaurant in the East China Sea. For very high-end Chinese restaurants, the location usually needs to be reserved in advance, and it was often not available. The reason why Wu Chen chose Lao Pin Zan was because Li Ruobing was a frequent visitor of Lao Pin Zan and a top member. When she entertained important customers, she would often choose there. The second was that it was a place where rich people could afford to go, and businessmen especially liked it there, so it was easy to meet acquaintances there, that was, those big businessmen who were extremely rich in the East China Sea. The two drove to the restaurant. There was a private room, but they didn't go there. They found a window seat on the first floor. It's not because the private room was too big. Li Ruobing wanted more people to know Wu Chen's existence, that Wu Chen was her boyfriend. Since she wanted to meet people, she naturally did so in a place where people can see him. A la carte. Waiting for food. Sure enough, someone came up to say hello. Chapter 28. Mr. Wu is really a talent. Boss Li, what a coincidence, you also come here for dinner today. The first person who came to say hello was a middle-aged man wearing glasses, nearly 50 years old, and very thin. Mr. Han, what a coincidence. Li Ruobing looked surprised. Han Deli, 47 years old, the CEO and major shareholder of Dragon City Innovation Group. He is in the electronics accessories business. He had been married twice and had a son and a daughter. At present, the business of Dragon City Innovation Group was very good, and it could be said that it was booming. The first time Wu Chen saw Han Deli, he silently read Han Deli's meaning in his heart. No introduction needed, he knew it. In fact, Han Deli and Li Ruobing had no business contacts. It was impossible to have any relationship between those who made cosmetics and those who made electronic accessories. There were too many opportunities to get to know each other, such as a business reception, a big person's birthday banquet, or a friend of a friend. Rich people liked to make friends and were very proactive. Everyone understood the truth that many friends meant many paths, and many enemies meant many walls. Although Li Ruobing was a person who didn't like to socialize in private, she would definitely know what should be known. In terms of meeting people, Li Ruobing's innate advantage could be said to be huge. She was too young among a group of billionaires, she was beautiful, and had a very strong background, which made her easy to attract attention on almost any occasion, and there would always be some big bosses who would take the initiative to make friends with her. Li Ruobing exchanged pleasantries with Han Deli, and Han Deli naturally noticed that Li Ruobing was eating with a young man. "This is your brother?" Han Deli asked with a smile. Of course, Han Deli knew about Li Ruotai's existence. Few people in Donghai didn't know about the title of Mr. Li, but the Li family had a great career, and there were many members of the third generation. Because Wu Chen was too young, Han Deli didn't think in the direction of his business partner. "No, this is my boyfriend, Wu Chen." Li Ruobing said and looked at Wu Chen's hand gesture again. Honey, this is Mr. Han of Dragon City Innovation. Wu Chen stood up. He hadn't stretched out his hand yet. Han Deli stretched out his hand first. The two shook hands and said, "Nice to meet you." Han Deli had a surprised expression on his face, but he was actually shocked in his heart. Because he knew that Li Ruobing was 27 years old, had never been in a relationship, and didn't seem to like men, and Li Ruobing's fake boyfriend drama was already a joke in the Donghai business district. It was said that in order to resist the marriage arranged by the family, Li Ruobing found a shield. How did they know it was fake? Because Li Ruobing never brought her boyfriend to a restaurant for a date before, it was only used for special occasions. She was just a tool person, and at some business banquets, if Li Ruobing said that the person next to her was her boyfriend, others would misunderstand that she was Li Ruobing's subordinate. No gestures of intimacy. If Li Ruobing didn't speak, her previous fake boyfriends didn't dare to speak. They were always submissive in front of Li Ruobing, carefully serving tea and water for Li Ruobing. Therefore, it was all fake, and everyone knew it was fake. But this time, Li Ruobing just called Wu Chen, honey. And today, Li Ruobing seemed to be in a good mood. With a strong and domineering personality, she always lacked a smile on her face, but now, Li Ruobing had a natural smile on her face. So, for real this time. Mr. Wu, it's a pleasure to meet you, ha ha ha. Mr. Wu looks like a good-looking talent, and he really matches Boss Li. Boss Li has a good eye. Han Deli had a quick mind, laughed loudly, praised Wu Chen, and also praised Li Ruobing. Thank you, Mr. Han, you're being polite. Wu Chen said with a smile, and then exchanged glances with Li Ruobing. Ha ha ha. Han Deli laughed again and asked, where is Mr. Wu's work? I just graduated from university, and I'm helping out in Ruobing's company, Wu Chen said. These words seemed to be very timid. It seemed that something was wrong with a college student who has just graduated and had no career, only to work in a girlfriend's company. But, who was Li Ruobing? Could her boyfriend be an ordinary person? So when Wu Chen said frankly that he had just graduated, the first thought that popped into Han Deli's mind was, which noble son of a big family is this? It was impossible for Li Ruobing to find an ordinary person. In terms of Li Ruobing's personality, talent, and background, it was impossible for ordinary people to catch her eye. Boss, the guests are here. You, behind Han Deli, the assistant came up and whispered something in a low voice. Ha ha ha, I'm sorry to interrupt your date. Han Deli immediately changed his voice and said, Boss Li, I wish you a prosperous business. My client has arrived and I have to go say hello. You are busy, business is booming. Li Ruobing said. Han Deli hurried away, but he walked a long way, but before going up the stairs, he turned his head and glanced at Wu Chen. He's still guessing, which family's young master was this? Han Deli is a nice guy, he likes to make friends, and he's the secretary of the East China Sea Chamber of Commerce. Seeing that he went upstairs, Li Ruobing looked at Wu Chen and said briefly about Han Deli. In fact, the two of them came here on purpose today to let people know Wu Chen. And as Li Ruobing's boyfriend, if Wu Chen was a real boyfriend and girlfriend, she would definitely tell who the person who just came here was, so Li Ruobing said it. She had to let Wu Chen understand. Wu Chen moved the water glass with a smile and tidied up the dishes on the table. After Li Ruobing finished speaking briefly, he raised his head and said, I know him better than you. Li Ruobing's expression froze for a moment, and she smiled indifferently. After a while, he said, okay, you are an information businessman. 8 or 9 minutes later, the second person who said hello came over. Boss Li, long time no see. It was a tall and thin man in his 40s who came with a beautiful female companion, but it was not his wife. Wang Jiyu, the general manager of Zhengguang Industrial Group, the second shareholder, the major shareholder, and the chairman was his father. It had been confirmed that he would completely take over the family business in the future. There was a son who was divorced and had many lovers. Currently, there were 3 lovers in the relationship. Mr. Wu, hello, hello. Almost the same process. After Wang Jiyu learned that Wu Chen was Li Ruobing's boyfriend, he almost showed surprise on his face. Afterwards, 2 other giants from the East China Sea came to say hello: Zhou Ru, the boss of Weihong Electronics, and Qian Fugi, the boss of Elfson Real Estate. Their reactions were exactly the same as the previous 2. Speaking of which, not all the people who come to Lao Pin Zan to eat were the bosses. But if their identity was not enough, it was impossible to know Li Ruobing. Even if they knew Li Ruobing, they didn't dare to come over to say hello because. Therefore, there were only a few who came to say hello and pleasantries. The dishes were served. The 2 talked softly while eating. Li Ruobing seldom showed her face in public in private. She was very low-key and less necessary, and many people knew that Li Ruobing was low-key, so when they see Li Ruobing here, they were surprised and come to talk. Even so, during mealtime, there were not many people who approached them. But the news will travel. In a few days' time, many people in the Donghai business district would hear that Li Ruobing, the eldest lady of the Li family and the owner of Symphony Fashion, was really in love. Yo, isn't this Miss Li? What a coincidence. Someone came to say hello again. It's a woman. The voice speaking was not polite, but a little yin and yang. Chapter 29. Why do I suddenly feel that you look familiar? No one dared to provoke Li Ruobing. Of course not, although the Li family was a wealthy family, it was not the top. Moreover, Li Ruobing had always kept a low profile. She never took the initiative to talk about her family background. People who were not high enough to know the Li family would not understand how powerful the Li family was. There were also some people who had some relationship with Li Ruobing, who don't know Li Ruobing well, so of course they dared to offend Li Ruobing. Li Ruobing didn't like being called Miss Li. Only on certain occasions and certain people called her that. She liked the name Boss Li very much, and she could be called Ms. Li, but Boss Li was her favorite because the word boss would weaken Li Ruobing's female identity, which was in line with her strong aura of a strong woman. This was also the reason why Wu Chen kept calling her Boss Li in private since the first time he met her. Wu Chen knew what she liked. He didn't want to make Li Ruobing feel disgusted with him because of a title and thus form some kind of prejudice, which was very unnecessary. And the person who came to say hello at this moment called Li Ruobing Miss Li, which was obviously intentional. Li Ruobing frowned and looked up. Wu Chen also glanced at it. She was a lady, wearing a French haute couture dress, holding a Hermes platinum bag, and a huge diamond ring. She was about 30 years old, with long wavy hair and a delicate face, but her makeup was a bit heavy. Wu Chen knew who she was the first time he saw her. Lu Kaishu, formerly known as Lu Liwan, is 32 years old and a resident of Lujia Village, Sishui Town, Irma County, Donghai City. Her husband was Lu Guangnian, chairman of Donghai Jewelry Group. After marrying Lu Guangnian 7 years ago, he gave birth to a son. With the help of Lu Guangnian, she established Yunshou Fashion Company, Limited. Daily cosmetics business. She and Li Ruobing were not only acquainted but also very familiar. But not a friendly relationship. They were a commercial competitor. And as far as Wu Chen knew, Lu Kaishu always felt that Li Ruobing stole her business. Lu Kaishu opened a cosmetics company in Donghai 6 years ago, and Li Ruobing came to Donghai to start a company 4 years ago. Originally, Lu Kaishu had no ability to run a company. If Lu Guangnian hadn't invested money and supported her with his connections, her company would have gone bankrupt long ago. And just after Li Ruobing came to start the company, the situation of Lu Kaishu's Yunshou company got even worse. The two really had a grudge 3 years ago. Li Ruobing successfully negotiated the business of a large chain beauty salon. That was, the beauty salon would use and recommend magic colors and fashionable skincare products to customers, which was an offline promotion. Before that, the skincare products recommended by this beauty salon were all produced by Yunshou Fashion. After that, every time Lu Kaishu saw Li Ruobing, her nose was not her nose, and her eyes were not her eyes. Especially this year, the valuation of Li Ruobing's Symphony Fashion Company was nearly 2 billion, and it was well known throughout the country. Lu Kaixiu's company was only worth 30 to 50 million. This was because of the high fixed assets and the relationship with the factory. In fact, it was a small local workshop. The gap was too big. She was not as good as Li Ruobing in business. She was not as good looking as Li Ruobing. Her family background and knowledge were even worse than Li Ruobing. Women were jealous, and Lu Kaixiu was a person who liked to compare herself to others. In addition, she had been competing for years, so whenever she saw Li Ruobing, she would come to talk, but she would never say anything good. Mrs. Lu, Boss Lu didn't come with you today. Li Ruobing responded indifferently, and she tilted her head to look at the restaurant as she spoke. She didn't see Lu Guangnian. Li Ruobing was very calm. She knew that Lu Kaixiu was here to find fault, and she would probably say some nasty things out of nothing. Li Ruobing was already too lazy to talk to this woman with a brain problem. It's not that she had no temper. The reason why she ignored this woman was because Li Ruobing and Lu Guangnian had a good personal relationship. Li Ruobing knew Lu Guangnian because of his younger brother Li Ruotai. Li Ruotai had a very close relationship with Lu Guangnian. Not only that, Li Ruobing liked him because of Lu Guangnian's temper towards Li Ruobing. Lu Guangnian started his career in the demolition and relocation business. He was half black and half white back then. Later, he set up a real estate company. At present, among the top 10 richest people in the East China Sea, Lu Guangnian could be ranked 6th, with a net worth of about 8 billion. Lu Guangnian was also the vice president of the East China Sea Chamber of Commerce. Li Ruobing and Lu Guangnian had forgotten their friendship. Lu Guangnian said in private more than once that Li Ruobing was born the wrong baby because Li Ruobing was very strong and had a very manly style of dealing with things. He dared to make such jokes, which showed the relationship between the two. And Lu Guangnian told Li Ruobing more than once in private that he begged Li Ruobing and hoped that Li Ruobing would not care about his wife. As for Li Ruobing's competition with Lu Kaixiu in business, Lu Guangnian didn't care. He just spent money to make his wife happy. He didn't expect to make money, just pay less. Lu Guangnian was also famous for loving his wife. In fact, Li Ruobing had never understood why Lu Guangnian, who was so forthright and righteous, married such a mentally handicapped bastard. Just because she gave birth to a son. My husband is outside, waiting for the guests. He will come in later. Lu Kaixiu said, then turned her gaze directly to Wu Chen, and said, Miss Li, is this your boyfriend? No one who was familiar with Li Ruobing would know that's the question, but Lu Kaixiu was here to find fault. Li Ruobing responded with a nasal voice. Hey, Ms. Li, since when did you start liking a little boy? Lu Kaixiu's tone suddenly became exaggerated. Miss Li, are you 27 this year? Are you going to be in your early 20s this year? You look good. You are an old cow who eats tender grass and eats very well. Lu Kaixiu was very loud, deliberately attracting attention so that other people in the restaurant could hear her. She wanted to embarrass Li Ruobing. In fact, this situation would not embarrass Li Ruobing at all. She had a very strong heart. But she didn't have to bear it at this time. Li Ruobing held the wine glass. Wu Chen knew that she might pour the wine directly on Lu Kaixiu's face. This would worsen her relationship with Lu Guangnian. It was unnecessary. So Wu Chen opened his mouth first and said, have you injected too much uric acid on your head? Don't act like a shrew, disturbing everyone's meal. What did you say, little boy? Lu Kaixiu turned her head to look at Wu Chen. Am I wrong? It's not on your head. Wu Chen said with a light smile, could it be that you hurt your nerves when they cut your chin during plastic surgery? It can't be when the corners of your eyes were opened, your brain was ruined, right? Shut up. I haven't had plastic surgery. Lu Kaixiu screamed like a cat whose tail was stepped on. It was a secret that she had plastic surgery. She was very satisfied with her exquisite appearance now and was very concerned about what others said about her plastic surgery. Wu Chen didn't know why there were people who liked to find trouble for nothing. Everyone had dark secrets, even for women like Li Ruobing. And Wu Chen, he knew the secrets of all the important people in the entire East China Sea. He said that Lu Kaixiu's plastic surgery was just the beginning. Lu Kaixiu's big secret, the most shameful thing, Wu Chen hadn't said it yet. That thing was enough to make her disappear from the world. In fact, Wu Chen had no intention of taking the initiative to expose anyone's scandals. He was not just idle now. But he never relented when it came to sluts. You can't live by doing your own crimes. Oh, why do I suddenly feel that you look familiar? Wu Chen suddenly seemed to see something, stared at Lu Kaishu, and said, have you worked in a bathing center before? Chapter 30. What did Wu Chen tell Lu Guangnian? You worked in the bathing center. Your whole family has worked in the bathing center. Are you shameless? You bitch. Lu Kaishu blushed and shouted excitedly, scolding Wu Chen angrily. She did work in a bathing center, but that was 10 years ago, and she did it for a very short time. After she succeeded in plastic surgery, she fell in love with a rich man and married Lu Guangnian. It's over then. This was Lu Kaishu's shady secret. Although it was not the shadiest one, it was deadly enough. Quality, please pay attention to your quality. Everyone here is a civilized person. Wu Chen said indifferently, you can be regarded as a person of status now, and the habits you have developed in the years of being a chicken should be changed. You dare to frame me, slander me, my mother, Lu Kaishu excitedly stepped forward to smash Wu Chen with her bag. She had been married to Lu Guangnian for several years, so it stood to reason that she would not make a fool of herself in public like this, and she should pretend to be a cultivated person. But what Wu Chen said was true. She was flustered, so she could only use more anger to cover up her panic. Bang bang. The bag fell on someone, but it wasn't Wu Chen, because someone stood in front of Wu Chen in time, and it was Li Ruobing's bodyguard. Li Ruobing brought bodyguards with her when she came out today, but there were not as many bodyguards during the day. Several bodyguards were also sitting in the restaurant, but in the corner so that they would not overhear the conversation between Li Ruobing and Wu Chen, but they could, in an emergency, protect the two. When Lu Kaishu yelled for the first time, several bodyguards came over. They also asked Li Ruobing with their eyes. But Li Ruobing didn't express too much, because Wu Chen took the trouble over, and Li Ruobing also wanted to see how to solve this trouble. Lu Kaishu was a mentally handicapped thing, not worth caring about, but Lu Guangnian had great power in the East China Sea. The Li family siblings were dragons crossing the river in the East China Sea. As for Lu Guangnian, he was definitely a local snake, who confronted the Li family head-on in the East China Sea. This was also one of the reasons why Li Ruobing and Li Ruotai could get along well with Lu Guangnian when they came here. Temperament was only one aspect. More importantly, there was no big difference in identity. Although Li Ruobing hadn't been in contact with Wu Chen for a long time, she knew that Wu Chen was not a reckless man. He said that about Lu Guangnian's wife in public, and that she had been a chicken. Would he really let Lu Guangnian lose face? Mrs. Lu, please calm down, please calm down. The bodyguard stopped Lu Kaishu, but Lu Kaishu seemed to be crazy and wanted to hit Wu Chen with her bag, so the bodyguard naturally couldn't let her go. Snapped. A loud slap. It was Lu Kaishu who slapped the bodyguard back and yelled, "Go away." The bodyguard, who was nearly 1.9 meters tall and whose arms were thicker than Lu Kaishu's legs, didn't move at all. His face remained unchanged, and he said calmly, "Madam Lu, please calm down." Li Ruobing narrowed her eyes at this moment. The bodyguards were all her confidants and had been with her for many years. Li Ruobing stood up. At this time, "Kaishu, why are you arguing?" Near the gate on the first floor of the restaurant, a dark-skinned middle-aged man in his 50s in a neat suit shouted. Lu Guangnian, 55 years old, chairman of Donghai Jewelry Group, vice chairman of Donghai Chamber of Commerce, representative of Donghai City People's Congress, one of the core figures in the Donghai business community, and one of the 10 richest people in Donghai. Today Lu Guangnian came to treat someone to dinner. Regarding the old city renovation project of Dongcheng Old Street, Lu Guangnian was determined to win it. However, although his company was the largest real estate company in Donghai City, it was not well known in the whole country. At present, there were several domestic giant real estate companies competing with him, so he had to go through the relationship. Just now he personally greeted the guests outside the door and let his wife enter the restaurant. Unexpectedly, when the guests waited, before entering the restaurant, he saw that his wife was going crazy and wanted to beat someone. Normally, in such a situation, he would definitely go there immediately to protect his wife. But he saw Li Ruobing, who had just stood up, at a glance. He immediately understood that it was probably his wife who had nothing better to do and went to provoke others. Seeing her husband coming, the rambunctious Lu Kaishu immediately calmed down, her eyes filled with tears, and she put on an expression of being extremely aggrieved and bullied. Lu Guangnian walked over quickly. "Brother Lu is here," Li Ruobing said calmly. Lu Guangnian nodded to Li Ruobing and smiled apologetically at Li Ruobing. He knew that his wife had caused trouble. If Lu Kaishu hadn't been his wife, she wouldn't have been entangled with Li Ruobing to this day, and she would have been dealt with long ago. The eldest lady of the Li family had always given him face, so she endured it. "Honey, this little boy scolded me. He said that I was ugly, that I had plastic surgery, and that I had been a chicken." Lu Kaishu leaned directly into Lu Guangnian's arms, crying so pitifully. Lu Guangnian's face changed drastically, and his eyelids twitched. As a billionaire, a successful businessman, and a prominent figure in the East China Sea, his wife was publicly said to have been a chicken. As a man, face was very important. And Lu Guangnian had a good face. If he didn't get angry today, the outside world would probably think that Lu Guangnian was afraid of the younger generation of his Li family, and he would directly become the laughingstock of some people. At the moment, everyone in the restaurant was looking at this side, and the customers brought by Lu Guangnian were all watching from the side. It's true that it was embarrassing that something like this had happened. It's even more embarrassing if he didn't handle it well. "It's all right, don't cry. I'll take care of it." Lu Guangnian comforted his wife Lu Kaishu, then pulled her aside, took 2 steps forward, and asked with a bad expression, "Boss Li, your friend?" He asked Li Ruobing directly, because he didn't know Wu Chen, so he could only tell that the two were together. He was really angry, very angry, but he was still restrained. It's easy to say anything in private, but in public, scolding his wife for slapping him in the face, this matter could be resolved with a few words. Li Ruobing knew that Lu Guangnian was on fire, she could tell from his words. She called him Brother Lu, and Lu Guangnian privately called her Ruobing. "My boyfriend, the little boy as your wife referred to," Li Ruobing said with a blank face, straight on. If the relationship was broken, it would be broken, and she was not afraid. Lu Guangnian's eyes changed slightly. Li Ruobing's boyfriend. Listening to Li Ruobing's tone, was it true that she dared to offend him for this young man? "It's just a little boy. You are 30 years old and still not married, so finding a 20-year-old, was it not to support a little boy? Am I wrong?" Lu Kaishu snarled again. Lu Guangnian turned his head and glared at his wife. "They bullied me, ganged up on bullying me, what they said was so ugly." Lu Kaishu immediately cried again. Lu Guangnian immediately softened his heart to his wife again and said softly, "I'll take care of it, don't talk." Wu Chen stood up at this moment, raised his hand to let the bodyguard move away, took a step forward, and stretched out his hand with a smile. "Boss Lu, let me introduce myself. I am Wu Chen." Lu Guangnian glanced at Wu Chen's hand, with an expression of, "You're done for," on his face. He really stretched out his hand and shook Wu Chen's hand, but he grabbed Wu Chen's hand very hard. Wu Chen took advantage of the situation and pulled violently, bumped shoulders with Lu Guangnian, pressed Lu Guangnian's right shoulder with his left hand, tilted his head, and whispered in Lu Guangnian's ear. Lu Guangnian wanted to push Wu Chen away, but Wu Chen's words made him stop. He not only listened carefully to what Wu Chen said but also changed his expression wonderfully and repeatedly. Wu Chen talked with Lu Guangnian for a full 2 minutes, but Lu Guangnian didn't push Wu Chen away, and even tilted his head and asked Wu Chen. Everyone present was a little confused. It was supposed to be a fight. What did Wu Chen say to Lu Guangnian? How could Lu Guangnian calm down immediately? Even listening carefully. Chapter 31. The Bureau of Murder and Money. Wu Chen had a very good impression of Lu Guangnian. He was bold and generous, and he did everything for his friends. Many illegal means have been used, but Wu Chen didn't care about those. For a long time, Wu Chen liked to help others and even donated all his savings to the orphanage. Because it was reset every day, the money donated, the previous day, would be returned on a new day. It didn't matter. In the previous millennium reincarnation, Wu Chen helped Lu Guangnian more than once and changed Lu Guangnian's fate. Although he couldn't even see the result, because there was no future in resetting the time, it could be regarded as a way to pass the time, which was very fun. Lu Guangnian's problem was very big. Not a business problem, but from himself, and from his family. Lu Guangnian started his career in house demolition. When he was young, he had many disputes with others. When he was in his 20s, he once stood up for his brother. It was that knife block that caused him big problems. That was when he was 26 years old. He was taken to the hospital with 5 knives in his body, and he almost failed to be rescued. He lay in the hospital for 3 months. When he was discharged from the hospital, the doctor told him clearly that it might be difficult for him to have children in the future. The doctor was right. It was true that Lu Guangnian had been infertile since then. He tried his best, even going abroad to have a test tube baby, but he failed. This was also the reason why he divorced his first wife. And with his success and fame, having no children was already a heart disease for him. He was indeed very successful in business. His interpersonal relationship and reputation were also very good. The brother he blocked the knife back then was still his best brother and his right-hand man. Everything seemed to be going well. This made his heart disease magnified a lot. He had had many women, had tried many times, but without success. Until he met Lu Kaishu. Lu Kaishu was originally one of his many mistresses, but she became pregnant 3 months after meeting him, and the child was born smoothly, and it was a boy. Lu Guangnian also did a paternity test, and the son was indeed his own. His life had been perfect ever since. This was also the reason why he doted on her so much. Lu Kaishu also developed an arrogant temper because of being doted on by Lu Guangnian. No one dared to offend her because of Lu Guangnian's obedience to her all these years. But, according to Wu Chen's investigation results during the Millennium Reincarnation, he knew that Lu Guangnian's son was not his own. This was a plot to seize the billionaire's property. A game of murder and money. The matter of Lu Guangnian's infertility, before he married Lu Kaishu, was known to everyone in the Donghai business district. A super rich man had no offspring, and no one would inherit the family property in the future. This would naturally become a topic of discussion. So Lu Kaishu and her cousin made this game. Lu Kaishu's cousin was named Lu Ligang, from Lujia village, Sishui town, Irma County, Donghai city. In fact, Lu Ligang was not Lu Kaishu's cousin. The two were not related by blood, but both were from Lujia village, and both had the surname Lu. Lu Ligang was 5 years older than Lu Kaishu. Back then, Lu Ligang brought Lu Kaishu out of the village and went to the bathing center. After Lu Kaishu had plastic surgery, Lu Ligang started to do more high-end business. Under Lu Ligang's arrangement, Lu Kaishu became the mistress of several bosses. Until, Lu Ligang got in touch with a close friend of Lu Guangnian. Lu Ligang spent a lot of money back then to send Lu Kaishu to Lu Guangnian's side through connections. At that time, Lu Guangnian also went to the doctor in a hurry, and changed women every day. In this way, Lu Kaishu took the initiative to approach Lu Guangnian and, smoothly, became pregnant. The child was not Lu Guangnian's, but Lu Ligang's. Today, Lu Ligang appeared to be Lu Kaishu's cousin who worked under Lu Guangnian and was reused, but in private, the cousins were lovers. Wu Chen even knew that Lu Ligang had long planned to kill Lu Guangnian, so that Lu Kaishu and his son could inherit the inheritance smoothly. But it was stopped by Lu Kaishu. Of course, Lu Kaishu didn't find out because of her conscience, but because the child was too young. She was not so stable, and she was afraid that she would not be able to compete with the old people in Lu Guangnian's company. Wu Chen once kidnapped Lu Kaishu and Lu Ligang together in one day. He asked everything, so he knew it very well. Your son is the seed of Lu Ligang. He and Lu Kaishu are not cousins, so they are not related by blood. They are all lying to you. Your son doesn't look like one, and you have discovered it, right? It was Wu Chen's first words in Lu Guangnian's ear, and he spoke very fast. He knew that Lu Guangnian had already discovered that the child was not like him, nor was he like Lu Kaishu. But because a paternity test had already been done, Lu Guangnian could only keep his doubts in his heart. And Lu Guangnian had heard some gossip over the years. He and Lu Kaishu were an old couple and young wives, so it was easy to be said, and he had been unable to have children for many years. He suddenly had a son, but the child was not like him. Gossip was inevitable. This was a thorn in Lu Guangnian's heart. Lu Kaishu's real name is Lu Liwan. She and Lu Ligang are both from Lujia village, Sishui town. They are not related by blood. Lu Kaishu was brought out by Lu Ligang back then. It is true that she has been a lady. She appeared by your side because Lu Ligang deliberately arranged it back then. Yes, you are infertile. Everyone in Donghai knows that they deliberately set up a trick. I know you can't believe my words for a while, but the fact is that you should know who the child looks like. If you don't believe it, you can ask Lu Kaishu later. Ask her where she was yesterday afternoon. She went out with Lu Ligang yesterday afternoon. You can think about what she did. Someone went out by the stairs. You can also ask Lu Kaishu directly, but I think she will tell you that she has been in the company yesterday, and her cousin can testify for her and say that she has been in the office all the time, and there was no one else. You have already noticed something is wrong, right? They can always testify to each other because they are cousins, so you don't think in the direction of the relationship between the two of them as lovers, and they take advantage of this. I have done a paternity test. Wu Chen said a lot, and then Lu Guangnian turned his head and whispered something in Wu Chen's ear, with a deadpan face, unable to feel his emotions. The paternity test can also be faked. This is a plot. Do you understand the plot? It's planned. Of course, they will know that you will do the paternity test. During Lu Kaishu's pregnancy, you once gave Lu Kaishu a 10 million abortion fee, do you remember? Lu Ligang gave all the money to the doctor who issued the paternity test report. If you don't believe me, you can check whether the doctor left the hospital shortly after you took the paternity test. Wu Chen said a lot. In fact, if he said this kind of unilaterally, there would be no direct effect. The reason why it was effective now was that Lu Guangnian felt that something was wrong a long time ago, but because of the brother-sister relationship between Lu Kaishu and Lu Ligang, and the parent-child relationship back then. The appraisal report made him unable to figure out where the problem was. Everyone watched Wu Chen whispering to Lu Guangnian, and they continued to be dazed. Li Ruobing was also extremely puzzled. Why did the atmosphere suddenly change? She understood Lu Guangnian's temperament, but she didn't understand Wu Chen. Finally, Wu Chen finished speaking. He patted Lu Guangnian on the back, then walked back and sat down, picked up the wine glass, shook it slightly, turned sideways, and looked at the situation calmly. Lu Guangnian turned around slowly, looking at his wife Lu Kaishu expressionlessly. Chapter 32. The slap that slapped everyone dumbfounded. After all, they have been married for several years. Lu Kaishu knew Lu Guangnian well. Whenever Lu Guangnian was expressionless and emotionless, it meant that he was suppressing the anger in his heart to the limit. When Lu Guangnian was young, he had a very bad temper. He wanted to succeed, so he took the initiative to change, so, this was his way to control his emotions. Why, what's the matter, husband? Lu Kaishu asked a little uneasy. She didn't know what the little boy said to Lu Guangnian. The other people around didn't know, and they were very curious. Obviously, there was going to be a conflict, but Wu Chen's whisper not only directly stopped Lu Guangnian from attacking him but also made Lu Guangnian's mood become very strange. Where did you go yesterday afternoon? Lu Guangnian asked expressionlessly. I'm in the company. Lu Kaishu's expression was obviously unnatural, which made Lu Guangnian's eyelids twitch. I've been in the office, with my brother, and we discussed the promotion plan all afternoon. Husband, why are you suddenly asking this? Under normal circumstances, normal people would not say so much when faced with this kind of question. There was already an excuse. But Lu Guangnian didn't question Lu Kaishu just now. He just asked normally. You and your cousin have been in the company? Lu Guangnian asked again. That's right, the two of us have been in the office all the time until we get off work. If you don't believe me, you can ask my brother. Lu Kaishu said. I've already asked him. I asked him casually this morning. Lu Guangnian's words made Lu Kaishu's face change drastically. He told me that you two went out to talk about clients yesterday afternoon, and you are not in the company. He was trying to trick her. In fact, Lu Guangnian never asked. Wu Chen told Lu Guangnian that he could cheat to see if he was lying. A person who could reach Lu Guangnian's height naturally had a brain, and he understood how to say it. In fact, Lu Guangnian didn't want to believe Wu Chen's words in his heart. He didn't want to believe it. He didn't know where Wu Chen appeared from suddenly. When did Li Ruobing have a boyfriend? But now was not the time to dwell on these. What Wu Chen said was too important to him. He had been suspicious for a long time, knowing that there was something wrong with the two cousins, but he didn't know the crux of the problem. He could only guess that Lu Kaishu might be secretly helping his brother Lu Ligang to make more money from him. This was not a big deal to Lu Guangnian, so he kept turning a blind eye. However, there was always a thorn in his heart, a thorn that he couldn't figure out in many places. Therefore, he was willing to verify what Wu Chen said. Ah, really? Is that what my brother said? Did he remember wrongly? Lu Kaishu was really panicked. She and Lu Ligang went out and messed around too many times, so of course they wouldn't discuss what to say when asked. It had been many years, but they had not been discovered. Because Lu Guangnian had never doubted their identities, they had long been a little unscrupulous. Did he remember wrongly? Then I'll call him now. Lu Guangnian said. Yes, that's right. Ah, right, I remembered. We did go to talk about clients yesterday afternoon, but I came back at 2 or 3 o'clock, and we've been talking about promotion in the office since then. Lu Kaishu changed her words again. Blue veins appeared on Lu Guangnian's forehead. Husband, what are you asking me all of a sudden? That little boy scolded me. Do you not care about me? Do you not love me? Don't you love me and my son? Lu Kaishu was suddenly excited again, pointing at Wu Chen, trying to shift focus. Snapped. A clear and loud slap in the face that even made everyone present feel numb. Lu Kaishu fell straight across, was thrown 2 meters away, and hit a decorative flower pot in the restaurant. Her forehead was bleeding. Blood slid directly from the corner of her mouth. The slap marks on her face swelled up, bright red. Lu Kaishu was beaten dumbfounded. The others present were also a little dumbfounded. Lu Guangnian was famous for doting on his wife. Why did he suddenly hit him in public? And it was as if there was bloody feud. Even Li Ruobing was startled. When Lu Guangnian said all the good things to himself in private and hoped that he would not embarrass Lu Kaishu, Li Ruobing thought about it, and she still vividly remembered it. Li Ruobing squinted at Wu Chen all of a sudden. What did this man tell Lu Guangnian? Take my wife back. Lu Guangnian still had no expression on his face. He turned his head and told his bodyguards, don't let her go out, let her reflect on herself. Yes, boss. The 2 bodyguards agreed and went over. They pulled up Lu Kaishu, who had been beaten into a fool, and walked out directly with her in their arms. Lu Guangnian looked at Wu Chen again, did not speak, took a deep breath, then turned around and raised his hand to gesture. There was an apologetic smile on his face. I'm sorry everyone, I made everyone laugh. The bitch was spoiled by me. Being ignorant, she spoiled everyone's dinner. I'm sorry everyone, I'm sorry. Lu Guangnian clasped his hands together, gestured around, nodded to every table in sight, and said sorry. It was said that so and so, as a character. What was a character? Lu Guangnian was. Boss Lu, you are polite. Boss Lu, you are busy with your work, we are fine. Someone in the restaurant immediately responded to Lu Guangnian, stood up, and said some polite words. Everyone is generous. All the consumption of everyone here today is on me, Lu Guangnian. Order whatever you want, Lu Guangnian said, then turned his head and gestured to the manager of the nearby restaurant. Every table will get 2 bottles of motai. Quote. Chinese restaurant, so the gift of wine was also allowed. It didn't matter whether you drink or not, the important thing was to give. Boss Lu is too polite. Really, Boss Lu? A few more people stood up. Sit down, everyone, you eat your food. I'm really sorry today, sorry. Lu Guangnian gestured downwards, apologizing to the surroundings again. Seeing that they were all seated, he returned to the guests. There were not many people, 5 or 6 people, who originally came in with Lu Guangnian, and ended up watching the event for a few minutes. They were led by a bald old man wearing glasses, about 60 years old, and wearing a suit with a very elegant feeling. Brother, I'm sorry, I wasted everyone's time and let you watch a joke. Lu Guangnian apologized first. Old Lu, what are you? The bald old man took a step closer and asked in a low voice. Hey, don't mention it. Lu Guangnian waved his hand and didn't say much. In fact, it was difficult for everyone present to analyze the conversation between Lu Guangnian and Lu Kaishu just now, because it was about where Lu Kaishu and her brother went yesterday. Where did she go with her brother? Naturally, they would not think in the direction of their cheating, and it was difficult to guess what was going on. It was even more impossible to think that Lu Guangnian's son was not even his own. This was also the reason why Wu Chen and Lu Guangnian whispered. The same thing, solved in different ways, would produce different effects, and might even be completely opposite. Just now Wu Chen could completely open up and say that if he made it clear in public, he could directly reveal more information, which would definitely make Lu Kaishu collapse on the spot, but doing so would completely offend Lu Guangnian. With Lu Guangnian's affairs like that, he would be on the news. News headlines like, "Billionaire gets tricked to raise another's son," would definitely cause a sensation all over the country. At that time, Lu Guangnian would not only lose face in the East China Sea, but the whole country will know about his scandal. From Wu Chen's point of view, Lu Guangnian was a person worth making friends with, so there's no need for him to open his mouth. Whether to be an enemy or a benefactor, Wu Chen naturally chose the latter. Brother, you go upstairs first and serve the food directly. I have some private matters. I'm sorry, I'll be there later. Lu Guangnian turned to the assistant and said, Little Joe, take care of things for me. I'll be there later. Don't worry, boss. The assistant agreed, gesturing to invite Lu Guangnian's important guests. Lu Guangnian kept sending them upstairs, whispering to the bald old man along the way. Li Ruobing sat down, holding the wine glass in her hand, and looked at Wu Chen quietly. Are there any flowers on my face? Why are you looking at me like that? Wu Chen asked with a smile, then raised his head and took a sip of his wine. Li Ruobing tilted her head, still staring at Wu Chen. She seemed to really want to see the flowers. Ruobing, I'm sorry, really, I've told her many times, but I didn't expect her to harass you again. Lu Guangnian, who sent the client upstairs, came back and apologized to Li Ruobing. In fact, these words were not for Li Ruobing, but for other people present. Hit your wife because of this. Very bad, but it's better than being known by the public to have a green light on his head. Lu Guangnian didn't know whether Li Ruobing knew what Wu Chen said. Brother Lu, you're being polite. Li Ruobing replied. Lu Guangnian looked at Wu Chen again. Let's go out and chat. Wu Chen said directly without waiting for him to speak. Lu Guangnian paused, nodded, and said, sure. Wu Chen got up and walked out the door with Lu Guangnian. Li Ruobing turned her head and watched the two walk out. Her eyes were wrong again. A chat alone. What did Wu Chen say? Can someone like Lu Guangnian be willing to talk to him in private? What more? He was the one leading Lu Guangnian. Li Ruobing was not a very curious person, but at this moment, her inner curiosity exploded. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Chapter 33. Do you still remember Ma Huifeng? Until Wu Chen and Lu Guangnian walked out of the gate of the restaurant, the guests in the restaurant were still looking at them, but not as unabashedly as before, but their eyes never left them. Wu Chen and Lu Guangnian didn't stop until they reached the edge of the flower bed. Boss Lu believed what I said. Wu Chen put one hand in his pocket, glanced at Lu Guangnian, and then looked at the street where cars were passing by. It was already night, the avenue was full of traffic, and the colors were blurred. At least one thing you said is right. She lied to me. She did have a problem with Lu Ligang. I will investigate. Lu Guangnian said that he didn't fully believe it, but in fact, he believed it at least 80%. It's just that no man was willing to admit that he was cuckolded. What's more, his matter cannot be easily described by the words, green hat. It's murder for money. How do you know this? Who told you? Lu Guangnian squinted at Wu Chen again and asked. Boss Lu, you have to understand that if it weren't for the fact that you and Ruobing have a good personal relationship, and you are considered brothers, I wouldn't have told you this. Wu Chen smiled lightly and said, today, it was a coincidence that I met you, and I tell you this for the sake of Ruobing. You don't need to ask me how I know this. Wu Chen looked at the bustling night scene on the street again and said lightly. You can't let the bad guys get their way, right? Lu Guangnian was silent for a while. He couldn't see through Wu Chen. Wu Chen gave him a very special feeling. It was rare for someone to speak to Lu Guangnian in this tone. They did not help Lu Guangnian because of Lu Guangnian's power, but because of other people's faces. Li Ruobing's boyfriend. Lu Guangnian already believed that Wu Chen was really Li Ruobing's man. Li Ruobing's former 3 fake boyfriends, Lu Guangnian met them, but they never looked at them directly. They felt the equality between him and Li Ruobing. Throwing Li Ruobing in the restaurant alone and asking him to come out and talk alone was enough proof. And Li Ruobing's previous defense of Wu Chen, the phrase, my boyfriend, the little boy in your wife's mouth, also made Lu Guangnian understand Wu Chen's position in Li Ruobing's heart. Lu Guangnian guessed Wu Chen's background in his mind. Either he came from a big family, or maybe he had a special status or talent. However, this was not the point. Lu Guangnian didn't care who Wu Chen was. Of course, he cared more about his own affairs. Thank you, brother. Lu Guangnian patted Wu Chen's shoulder. This sentence stripped the identities and relationships between the two of them, and it was simply a thank you. Lu Guangnian was more than 30 years older than Wu Chen, but he was still called brother. This was his habit, and it had something to do with his young mind. A normal 56-year-old man had grandchildren, but Lu Guangnian had been unable to have children for a long time, which affected his mentality. Just like a woman who was not married at the age of 40 would still dress in a fashionable and youthful way, while a woman who was married at the age of 20 would have children grown up at the age of 40. After being a mother for too many years, her outlook on life, values, and mentality would change. Have you told anyone else about this? Lu Guangnian asked. Not yet. Wu Chen continued, but I guess Ruobing will ask what I told you. Lu Guangnian raised his hand and grabbed his hair, turned his head to look at the street scene, his eyes filled with unspeakable sadness. It doesn't matter, there is no impenetrable wall, sooner or later people will know. Lu Guangnian said and then remained silent. How do you plan to deal with Lu Kaishu, Lu Ligang, and that child? Wu Chen asked. Lu Guangnian paused, turned his head to look at Wu Chen, and asked, the child really isn't mine. He didn't know why he believed Wu Chen so much. Maybe it was because Wu Chen's words solved the years of unhappiness in his heart. After Wu Chen said that Lu Kaishu and Lu Ligang were not brothers and sisters, all kinds of strange things that were hard to figure out could be figured out. But Lu Guangnian still hoped that the son was his. He was very traditional. He hoped to have children who would inherit his family business after 100 years. It's not yours. Wu Chen said very firmly. Lu Kaishu appeared by your side at the right time, just a few days before the ovulation period, after being with you, she and Lu Ligang. In fact, you should understand where the problem is. Unless a miracle happens, you won't be able to give birth again. Lu Guangnian's face was very bad. He looked at the street in front of the right, and then at the street in front of the left, and he didn't know what he was looking at. His eyes were not focused, and there was a faint red circle in his eyes. Tomorrow I will redo the paternity test. Lu Guangnian said. Jay sniffed and took out the cigarettes from his pocket, the unpacked Yellow Crane Tower 1916. As far as Wu Chen knew, Lu Guangnian used to be very addicted to smoking, but after Lu Kaishu became pregnant, he quit smoking for 2 years. Afterward, although he started smoking again, he was very restrained and could not smoke a few cigarettes a day. But he always had a pack of cigarettes with him. It was not prepared for himself, but for the guests during the welcoming and sending. Lu Guangnian unpacked the cigarette, smoked one, and handed it to Wu Chen casually. No smoking. Wu Chen raised his hand to signal. Lu Guangnian put the cigarette in his mouth, lit it, took a deep breath, exhaled the smoke, and inhaled forcefully, looking at the street with vacillating eyes, feeling that his mind was very confused now. He needed tobacco to help him relieve mental stress. Lu Guangnian suddenly took out his mobile phone again, as if he suddenly remembered something. He dialed a number, and said directly, Min, take someone to find Lu Ligang, and some people in the company who are close to him. Li Ying, Dong Ziheng, and the others, they will take me to that villa in the western suburbs. Yes, all will be withdrawn, and wait for me to go there. Xu Erman, senior vice president of Julie Group, has been a good brother of Lu Guangnian for decades. After hanging up the phone, Lu Guangnian, who was smoking a cigarette, began to lose his mind again. His mind was a mess, thinking too much. As the saying goes, help people to the end, and send Buddha to the west. Wu Chen sighed suddenly with a light smile, turned to look at Lu Guangnian, and said, Do you still remember Ma Huifeng? Wu Chen said, Looking at your age, you are only in your early 20s, and you even know her. Lu Guangnian asked back. Ma Huifeng was Lu Guangnian's first love girlfriend more than 30 years ago. Not only do I know her, but I also know that she broke up with you because you cheated on her back then. You were 23 years old, right? Wu Chen said. The two of you have known each other since you were 17. You have been together for 6 years. In the end, you betrayed her for a woman in a dance hall. Wu Chen's words were a bit harsh. Lu Guangnian was silent. Too many years passed, and he had even almost forgotten Ma Huifeng's appearance, but he would never forget her name, and would keep it in his heart for the rest of his life. That was in the 1990s, when the country was in a booming period of development, and those who dared to venture and fight hard could easily make a lot of money. It was not a dream to get rich overnight. Lu Guangnian was a person who dared to break through and fight hard. He was very affectionate with Ma Huifeng and even planned to get married. But when he met some people and made some money, he lost himself. At that time, he didn't think he was wrong and felt that Ma Huifeng was not good enough for him, but when he became famous, in retrospect, he felt that he was wrong. Wrong was wrong, missed was missed. Are you investigating me? Guangnian turned to look at Wu Chen with a serious expression. At Wu Chen's age, it was too doubtful for him to know such a long time ago. It's not important. What do I do? You can ask Ruobing to see if she will tell you. Wu Chen continued, the important thing is, I also know that Ma Huifeng was already pregnant when she broke up with you back then. She didn't kill the child. She gave birth to a boy, so now you not only have a son, but also a granddaughter. Slap. The cigarette in Lu Guangnian's hand fell to the ground, and he stared at Wu Chen dumbfounded. Chapter 34. I don't want to die in the same year, the same month, and the same day as you. This was why Wu Chen asked Lu Guangnian to come out and talk alone. Otherwise, there was nothing to say at all. He had said what he should say before, and the rest of Lu Guangnian could do his own investigation. As long as he and the child have another paternity test, the truth would come out. Wu Chen didn't need to say anything more. The purpose of coming out to talk alone was to tell Lu Guangnian that he had no future. He was injured and unable to have children. At the age of 26, he was a healthy and strong man before, of course, he could have children. Wu Chen had investigated too many people in the Millennium Reincarnation, learned too many people's secrets, and understood their past, so he would often sigh in his heart, fate really could play tricks on people. The lovers were long-lost siblings. The person who hid and ran in the middle of the night and killed him was his biological father. The hospital gave birth to the wrong child. The poor should enjoy wealth, but the rich should not live as well as a dog. But there was one point worth mentioning. That was, he didn't find Ma Huifeng through Lu Guangnian. Because Wu Chen has investigated the relationship networks of too many people, This would make the relationship networks of different people, with a certain person as the link, connect into a network. Wu Chen found Ma Huifeng because of her son Ma Jiawei. Ma Jiawei was 32 years old this year, with a master's degree. He was currently working in Donghai Flash Technology Group as the head of the technical department. The owner of Flash Group was Zhou Hai, 50 years old this year. He could be said to be one of the earliest programmers in China. He was a hacker in his early years and was a master of technology in the industry. During the time when Wu Chen was learning programming, he thought that his technology was already very high, and wanted to find a master to learn from. He met Zhou Hai first. Then he discovered that Zhou Hai had a great man under his command, and that was Ma Jiawei. Ma Jiawei's technology was already better than Blue. This was the reason why he was able to become an executive of a listed company at the age of 32. After that, Wu Chen wanted to get to know Ma Jiawei within a day, so he investigated Ma Jiawei. He was surprised to find that Ma Jiawei had her mother's surname and no father. Wu Chen calculated the time when Ma Huifeng gave birth, subtracted the time when she conceived in October, and calculated the time when she was pregnant. In the end, Wu Chen got the name of Ma Huifeng's first love boyfriend from an old neighbor, Lu Guangnian. In fact, it was difficult for ordinary people to know the name of Lu Guangnian of the Julie Group. For the general public, the well-known rich were either the top super rich in the country, or the number one in the local area, and the number two was rarely known. They only knew the company, but they didn't know the exact name of the boss. There were too many rich people, and ordinary people who could know their names were those who were often in the news, and there was only a handful of them. Find a random person on the street and ask him who the top 10 richest people in his city were. It was estimated that many people would not be able to name even one. However, Wu Chen had already investigated Lu Guangnian long ago, so he knew, but he thought it was the same name. But when he investigated further, he discovered that it really wasn't the same name. Ma Jiawei's biological father was Lu Guangnian, a real estate tycoon in the East China Sea. Her son, Yu. Lu Guangnian stared at Wu Chen dumbfounded, completely stupefied, unable to even utter a complete sentence. Your granddaughter is 5 years old this year, Wu Chen said with a smile. What you said is true. You didn't lie to me. Xiaofang, she had a child. Lu Guangnian's breathing became heavy, and he felt a little out of breath. This showed that his heart was already excited to explode. Why would I lie to you? Wu Chen kept smiling. Your son is very good, very good. His mother raised him very well, and your granddaughter is also quite cute. You will probably like it when you see her. She is just naughty at her age. Lu Guangnian raised his hand to cover his forehead and rubbed it vigorously. He walked back and forth a few steps. His breathing was heavier than before, and he was in a complex mood of disbelief, excitement, anxiety, and fear that it was fake. Wu Chen took out his mobile phone, opened the text message, and typed quickly with one hand. What's his name? What's my son's name? Lu Guangnian came over again and asked Wu Chen. Ma Jiawei, take his mother's surname. Wu Chen lowered his head and said, and then clicked to send the message. Jingle. Lu Guangnian's cell phone rang, but he didn't seem to hear it, and he wouldn't look at it if he heard it. Xiaofang, hasn't married for so many years. Lu Guangnian asked nervously again. No, the child was born, and she raised him alone. She was hurt by you, and she may no longer believe in men, so she has been alone. She worked very hard back then. A woman raised the child alone and took the child to work. Being looked down upon by others, sometimes she has to work a few jobs, but now, the hard work is over. Wu Chen even said, your son's income is very good now, so Ma Huifeng doesn't have to work so hard, and has already started to enjoy the blessings. Where is she? Lu Guangnian suddenly stepped forward and asked. It's in the East China Sea. Wu Chen continued, look at your phone. I just sent you their addresses and phone numbers. You can go to them, but you have to be mentally prepared. Lu Guangnian couldn't wait to get out of his phone and check the text message. Ma Huifeng has never left Donghai. She may not know where you are for a while, but after you become famous, others don't know. She will definitely know you. Know that you are rich and getting richer, but she never looked for you. Lu Guangnian looked up the text message slowly. Wu Chen looked at him and said, "How deep was your relationship back then? She hates you so much now. Although you are rich, their life is not difficult now, and they don't need your help." Lu Guangnian's eyes gradually lost focus, and he seemed to be caught in some kind of memory. "Boss Lu, it's time to go back, I'm waiting for you." Wu Chen glanced at his watch and said to Lu Guangnian. Guangnian came back to his senses. Wu Chen had already turned around and walked into the restaurant. Lu Guangnian quickly followed Wu Chen and quickly said in a low voice, brother, don't go, tell me more. You can find out by yourself. When you see them, you will have a lot of things in your heart. Every question will have an answer." Wu Chen turned his head and said. The two entered the restaurant together. Lu Guangnian went upstairs, while Wu Chen went to Li Ruobing's. After entering the restaurant, Wu Chen noticed that there were two middle-aged men standing beside Li Ruobing's table, who seemed to be greeting each other, presumably because he had been out for a while, and someone came over to say hello. "Boss Lu, I'm going." Wu Chen said something to Lu Guangnian and was about to leave. However, Lu Guangnian grabbed Wu Chen's hand, pulled Wu Chen closer, and the gesture of holding hands and whispering gave people a feeling that the relationship between the two was extraordinary. "You better not lie to me, you know the consequences." Lu Guangnian whispered. He was too afraid that Wu Chen would lie to him. "What if I didn't lie to you?" Wu Chen asked with a light smile. "Then you are my sworn brother by heart," Lu Guangnian said. Cough. Wu Chen coughed, and then said, "Forget it, you are so old, I don't want to die in the same year, the same month, and the same day as you." Lu Guangnian finally let go of Wu Chen and walked upstairs quickly. Wu Chen also gathered his suit and walked towards Li Ruobing. After walking a few steps, he was a little surprised, because the two people who were greeting Li Ruobing were a little special. One was the leader in the biomedical industry in the East China Sea, the boss of MU's biopharmaceutical group, Mu Sihai. The other is Wan Zhanmin, a partner of Symphony Fashion Company, a raw material supplier, and the owner of Donghai Wanman Biochemical Group. It was Mu Qianchen's father, the father of Mu Qianchen's best friend. The special thing was, Wu Chen just slept with Mu Qianchen yesterday. Chapter 35. Do I have a shady secret? Ha ha ha, Boss Li, we will definitely cooperate in the future. Mu Sihai laughed. There is a chance. Li Ruobing maintained a polite smile, saying that cooperation was not just a joke. Cosmetic companies and pharmaceutical companies do have the possibility of cooperation, that was in the field of cosmetics. At present, Symphony Fashion had only been established for 4 years. Although it had developed rapidly, it was definitely not comparable to Mu Biopharmaceuticals in terms of scientific research capabilities. Mu had scientific research bases and laboratories at home and abroad. Therefore, if Symphony Fashion really wanted to set foot in the cosmeceutical field, it could form a strong alliance with Mu Biopharmaceuticals under the circumstance that its own research and development capabilities were insufficient. Wu Chen came over and listened. Immediately be judged. It should be Wan Zhanmin who took the initiative to bridge the match. Wan Zhanmin and Li Ruobing had been business partners for a long time, so they were naturally very close, but as far as Wu Chen knew, Li Ruobing had basically no connection with Mu Sihai. It cannot be said that they didn't know each other at all, but they only know that they exist. What are you talking about? Wu Chen walked to the table and smiled. This is, Mu Sihai looked at Wu Chen. Boss Mu, Boss Wan, this is my boyfriend, Wu Chen. Li Ruobing introduced. Mr. Wu, nice to meet you. Both of them shook hands with Wu Chen. Mr. Wu is indeed a good-looking talent, ha 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 ha. Boss Li has a good eye. Mr. Wu is handsome, and he looks like a dragon and a phoenix among men. The enthusiasm of these two middle-aged people was beyond Wu Chen's imagination. Something was wrong. It felt like the two of them knew something about Wu Chen, and they were not surprised at all that Wu Chen was Li Ruobing's boyfriend. Then we won't disturb your date. Boss Li, we'll go first. The two just came to say hello and left after speaking. But instead of going to the box on the second floor, he walked towards the gate, as if he was about to leave. Wu Chen looked in the direction they left and immediately understood why the attitude of the two of them was a bit strange just now. Because they didn't just come to Lao Pinzan. Instead, they had already finished their meal on the second floor, so they came down because they saw Li Ruobing when he was about to leave the restaurant, so they came over to say hello. Obviously, when they were upstairs, they must have heard about what happened downstairs. Although Lu Guangnian was not the richest man in the East China Sea, he was definitely the most famous one in the East China Sea business district. What happened downstairs just now? Lu Kaishu troubled Li Ruobing. Li Ruobing's boyfriend went back. Lu Guangnian wanted to get angry, but was calmed down by Wu Chen's whispers. Instead he slapped his wife and apologized to all the guests on the first floor. In such a top-class restaurant, the slightest abnormal noise would attract special attention. Not to mention Lu Guangnian's status. That's why Mu Sihai and Wan Zhanmen were not surprised by Wu Chen's identity because they knew of Wu Chen's existence long before I went downstairs. They were afraid that there have been many speculations about Wu Chen's identity long ago, but they will only be hidden in their hearts, and they will not say it out. Wu Chen and Li Ruobing sat down facing each other again. The two had their first date, and the meal was full of twists and turns. Do you know them? Li Ruobing asked Wu Chen. Mu Sihai, Wan Zhanmen. Wu Chen said the names of the two people accurately. Li Ruobing only said Boss Mu and Boss Wan before but did not tell Wu Chen their names. You are really an information businessman. Li Ruobing said this in a low voice, not knowing whether to tease or admire. Of course, I'm a professional. Wu Chen smiled and picked up the wine glass. Li Ruobing also picked up the wine glass. Clink. Li Ruobing raised her head and took a sip of the wine, put down the wine glass, and picked up the chopsticks again, but did not pick up the food, put down the chopsticks again, pressed her elbows on the table, looked straight at Wu Chen and said, "You don't have anything to say to me." What? Wu Chen smiled, a very deliberate smile, delicately letting Li Ruobing understand that he was pretending to be stupid. What did you tell Lu Guangnian? Li Ruobing asked directly. She did not deny her curiosity. So curious. Wu Chen once again let her see what magic was. You really want to know? Wu Chen picked up the phone with a smile, and quickly typed something with one hand, typing super fast. Jingle. Li Ruobing's cell phone range. As soon as she picked up the phone, she frowned slightly. Texting face to face. After clicking on the text message, Li Ruobing's face changed suddenly when he saw the content of the text message. His son is not his own. When Wu Chen told Li Ruobing, he would say that it was because Lu Guangnian acquiesced when he was outside the door before. Li Ruobing looked up at Wu Chen, then quickly tapped the phone screen a few times to delete this message. Lu Guangnian's son was not his own. If it got out, it will be sensational news. It might even directly affect the stock price of Julie Group. Li Ruobing knew that this matter must not be leaked. At least not from her. Sorry friend. She also understood why Wu Chen wanted to send text messages, because this was a public place, and there were many people with distracted eyes. It would be bad if someone overheard a few words. No wonder he hit her so hard. Li Ruobing muttered softly, a little distracted and didn't know what to think. It took her a while to recover, and she turned her gaze back to Wu Chen. The eyes were different again. Is there anything you don't know? Li Ruobing asked. Yes, of course, Wu Chen said with a light smile. However, I know quite a lot. Everyone has secrets. I am doing intelligence, so I have to know everyone's secrets, including some shady things. I will not understand people who are not valuable, but as long as they are valuable, I will. This is business. Then do you know my secret? Li Ruobing asked with a gloomy gaze. Of course. Wu Chen smiled and nodded. You know all my secrets. Li Ruobing asked again. That's right, Wu Chen said with certainty. Then tell me, do I have a dark secret? Li Ruobing asked again. Li Ruobing wanted to see how strong the intelligence ability of this mysterious man in front of her was. He really knew everything. Does he know everyone's secrets? How can it be? Do you really want me to answer? Wu Chen asked back. Li Ruobing nodded but did not speak. Yes, you have. Wu Chen gave an affirmative answer. What is it? Li Ruobing asked again. In fact, she didn't remember any shady secrets she had. That was 10 years ago. Do you still remember the summer when you were 17? The girl with the ball head. Li Ruobing was taken aback for a moment, and then her face changed. If Wu Chen didn't say anything, she wouldn't think of that all of a sudden. Chapter 36. No privacy. No secrets. It's only been 10 years, I don't think you'll forget it. Wu Chen said with a smile again, that girl is called Peng Xiaoyun, right? 17 years old, what a beautiful age, innocent, carefree, just beginning to fall in love. Okay, that's it. Li Ruobing interrupted Wu Chen. Don't you want me to continue talking? Wu Chen asked with a smile. How did you find out? Li Ruobing asked Wu Chen back. Business secrets. Wu Chen smiled. He wouldn't tell Li Ruobing. This was what Li Ruobing told him herself. In the previous year's reincarnation, Wu Chen had slept with Li Ruobing about 100 times. Although the methods to get her in one day were the same each time, the words they said were different. As long as Wu Chen said something different, he could guide Li Ruobing to say something different. About her 17-year-old summer, she said it herself. At that time, the two of them had just finished their work, and they were very relaxed. Wu Chen joked with her, saying that not only men like her. A beautiful and strong woman like her, there might also be women who liked her. This brought back memories of Li Ruobing. She said that there were indeed girls who liked her. It was when she was 17, in her high school days, that there was a girl named Peng Xiaoyun. At that time, Li Ruobing was the eldest sister in the school. She had a cool personality. She had a very strong personality since she was a child. In fact, Peng Xiaoyun was not the only girl who fell in love with Li Ruobing at that time. Although there were few lesbians in the school, there were still some of them. The reason why Peng Xiaoyun was special was that she was restless for Li Ruobing. Perhaps it was because it was adolescence, or it might be because her personality was too strong, or it might be because she was under too much academic pressure at the time, and the college entrance examination was only a year away. Li Ruobing had never been in a relationship with a boy, but she almost had a spark with a girl. According to what Li Ruobing said, she didn't know what was wrong with her at the time. The girl with the ball head was very cute. Everything changed. She felt uncomfortable. Ultimately, no results. It almost happened, but it didn't happen. Li Ruobing, who was almost at a loss, finally confirmed her sexual orientation, not bisexual, but heterosexual. In fact, this matter was not a big deal. Li Ruobing didn't take that step, because she couldn't accept it both physically and psychologically. She just seemed too cool among girls at that time. Her attitude towards girls was misleading, which eventually caused the problem. However, for Li Ruobing, who is now 27 years old and still unmarried, this was definitely dark history. She was being forced into marriage by her family. She had always resisted family arrangements and had never been in a relationship. If people now knew that she once had such a chaotic and innocent past that was worth remembering, it would definitely have a great negative impact on her. Li Ruobing looked at Wu Chen, raised her hand to stroke her hair, and hung it behind her ear. She put her hand on the side of her head and said again, "Don't you think you know too much? Even the little thing about me when I was 17 years old. If you didn't mention it, I'd forget it. Are you warning me?" Wu Chen said calmly and smiled again, "Why don't you give me another 10 million and treat it as hush money?" He felt that Li Ruobing had begun to fear him. Because what he knew was indeed too much. Of course it's not because of the fact that she was 17 years old, but since Wu Chen could speak of this matter, it showed that his investigative ability was close to that of a ghost, and he could really know everything about a person. This was terrible. It would make Li Ruobing feel like she was standing naked in front of Wu Chen. No privacy, no secrets. Wu Chen did this on purpose. He knew Li Ruobing well and knew what he said would lead to consequences. Facing a woman like Li Ruobing, Wu Chen had only two choices: conquer her or be conquered and controlled by her. Li Ruobing advocated personal ability very much. So Wu Chen would let her gradually understand how scary he was. This was very likely to be played off. Once Li Ruobing completely lost her sense of control, she would definitely not show mercy, but Wu Chen would definitely not let that happen. He would not let Li Ruobing completely lose her sense of control. It was the sense of control that Wu Chen took the initiative to make Li Ruobing believe he loved money. Because Wu Chen loved money, Li Ruobing has money, and Wu Chen was actively seeking cooperation with her, so she would always feel that she could use money, or interests, to control Wu Chen. Wu Chen would maintain this situation until Li Ruobing put down her guard against Wu Chen in her heart and agree that Wu Chen was a stronger man than her. Then, he would completely conquer her. It was worth mentioning that being stronger than Li Ruobing was only one of the conditions for conquering her, but it was not the only condition. It did not mean that as long as a man was stronger than Li Ruobing, she would definitely be her ideal partner. That's just a basic condition. It was not easy to completely take her down from psychological to physical. Is your mind full of money? Li Ruobing said, holding her glass for a while, then turned her head and glanced casually at the situation in the restaurant. She was watching to see if anyone was eavesdropping on their conversation. Nobody. Those who came here to eat were not ordinary people. How could they have so much free time to keep paying attention to other people? If you don't give it, don't give it. But don't mock me, okay? Wu Chen continued, actually, you are asking my bottom line. You really want to know what I know. You asked me to tell you. If you don't ask, I won't mention it to anyone. Do you know her? Li Ruobing ignored Wu Chen's words and asked instead. Wu Chen followed Li Ruobing's gaze, and Li Ruobing turned her head to look at a beautiful girl who just walked down the stairs. Du Ru, 23 years old, the youngest daughter of Du Feng, the owner of Dongju Group, is 169 centimeters tall, with measurements of 75, 55, and 82. She wears size 38 shoes. She is a vegetarian and has a British short-haired blue cat named Pai Chu. When she was 19 years old, she had an operation for acute appendicitis, and there was a very light scar about 2 centimeters on her abdomen. She just got married in March this year, and her husband was. What about that? She didn't wait for Wu Chen to finish speaking. Li Ruobing gestured in another direction. Wu Chen turned his head to look. This time it was a very tasteful mature woman, wearing a lady's suit, standing up to toast. Hao Lulu, 32 years old, the manager of the public relations department of Chengxing Industrial, is married and has an 8-year-old son. She has maintained an improper relationship with Yang Baowen, the vice president of Chengxing Industrial, and goes to Ending Beauty Salon on Wenshan Road, Xicheng every Saturday afternoon for skincare. Yuan, let's eat. Li Ruobing interrupted again. It was extremely rare for a woman with her character to say, Yuan. She had lost interest in continuing to challenge Wu Chen's professionalism as an intelligence businessman. The two ate. Li Ruobing even took the initiative to bring food for Wu Chen, because it was a public place, and she hadn't forgotten about pretending to be a couple. But most of the time, she kept her eyes downcast, looking sideways at the table, a little distracted. What are my measurements? Li Ruobing suddenly asked softly, without looking at Wu Chen, and asked while picking up vegetables. Still not giving up. 82, 56, 85. Wu Chen was also eating, casually said. What are my characteristics? Li Ruobing asked softly again. You are the white tiger. Wu Chen replied in a low voice. Slap. The chopsticks fell directly on the table. Asterisk. Chapter 37. Dear. Come here. Li Ruobing thought he would tell where she had a mole on her body, or where she had some faint scars from fighting with others when she was young. White tiger. Li Ruobing was indeed a white tiger, and she was the only one who knew about it. She quickly realized her difference when she was just in puberty, and she didn't want to be judged, so after she was 14 years old, even the girls' bathhouse at school had never been there. Wu Chen's words scared the chopsticks off Li Ruobing's hand. Because Wu Chen not only said her most private things. It's still something that couldn't be known by others at all. Li Ruobing silently picked up the chopsticks that fell off the table and looked up at Wu Chen again. That gaze was full of danger, and Wu Chen could clearly feel that Li Ruobing was looking at a pervert. How long have you been following me? Li Ruobing asked with a gloomy look. She really already felt that Wu Chen was a pervert who was stalking and peeping. He might have even sneaked into her house before, hid in the cabinet, and stared at her all night. I am 22 years old. Wu Chen kept smiling. I just graduated from university this year, and I have been in my hometown until high school, 3 years in high school, 4 years in college, and I have been in Donghai City for a total of 7 years, but 4 years ago, you were in abroad. You returned to China after graduating with a master's degree and came to Donghai. I still have to go to school, and my grades have always been very good. No matter what, Donghai University is considered a key university. I not only know you, I know more people and things than you imagined. So how much time do you think I will spend on one? Do you think I will use this stupid method of tracking to investigate one by one? As an intelligence businessman, I naturally have my professional ability, and I have methods beyond your imagination, but it is definitely not as simple as you think. Li Ruobing put down her chopsticks and pursed her lips again. She wanted to ask Wu Chen something, but she didn't ask, because she knew that the answer she might get was business secrets. She really had to admit that what Wu Chen said made sense. Wu Chen not only understood her but also understood too many people. Therefore, judging from Wu Chen's 22-year-old age, the way he investigated intelligence was by no means the way of tracking and squatting. Although that was effective, it took too long. Wu Chen simply didn't have that much time to survey so many people this way. There must be a more advanced and more effective way. You amuse me more and more. Li Ruobing suddenly smiled, with a strange gleam in her beautiful eyes. Since she met Wu Chen made Li Ruobing feel interesting more than once, but at this moment, her interest in Wu Chen had reached the extreme. The stubbornness and unwillingness to admit defeat in her bones made it difficult for Li Ruobing to accept the current situation. This kind of situation meant that Wu Chen knew everything about Li Ruobing, even the most private things, but Li Ruobing didn't know Wu Chen at all. This would cause Li Ruobing to arrange for more people to get to know Wu Chen more crazily and in depth after today. Including herself, she would try her best to find out the secret of this amazing man. And this was exactly what Wu Chen wanted to see. When a man could capture a woman, it usually started when the woman was interested in the man. For ordinary women, interest was generally triggered by a man's appearance and money. What Li Ruobing was least interested in were appearance and money. She had seen a lot of handsome guys, and being rich might not necessarily be richer than her. Respect was just respect and nothing else. Now, Wu Chen was using his mystery to attract Li Ruobing's interest in him. Cheers. Wu Chen raised his glass. Li Ruobing looked at Wu Chen with a smile on his face, then picked up the wine glass and clinked glasses with Wu Chen. Now she guessed in her heart that she was already thinking of a big plan against Wu Chen. Wu Chen was fearless about this and very much welcomed it. Li Ruobing was welcome to come crazy. Go deep. No scruples. Come get to know yourself. The first date of the two, the first dinner finally ended slowly without any alarm. There was no need to pay the bill. Lu Guangnian had already paid, and he paid for all the tables on the first floor. Li Ruobing took Wu Chen's hand and left Lao Pinzan under the eyes of many people. I'll take you home, Li Ruobing said just before going out. Get in the car and go home. On the way to Wu Chen's home, Wu Chen was in the car and briefly told Li Ruobing about Lu Guangnian, mainly about Lu Kaishu and Lu Ligang. As for Lu Guang's first love, he didn't say anything. He didn't know whether Lu Guangnian can successfully get back his first love, and it's hard to say whether his son recognized him or not. Before the results came out, Wu Chen felt that this matter should not be made public. After more than half an hour, in the old street of Dongcheng district, the entrance of the alley where Wu Chen's family was located was already in sight. Wu Chen knew why Li Ruobing took the initiative to send him back. One was for acting. If she never sent Wu Chen home, it would be too fake for their boyfriend and girlfriend setup to work. The second was that she wants to see if Wu Chen really lived here. Jingle. In the Bentley Continental, Li Ruobing's cell phone rang suddenly. Li Ruobing held the steering wheel with one hand, took a look at her phone, connected it, and said, "Speak." "I see." Li Ruobing frowned, hung up the phone annoyedly, and said to Wu Chen, "Someone is following us, probably from Ding Ruolong. If there is nothing wrong, I'll send someone to follow you." "How are you sure it's the person arranged by Ding Ruolong?" Wu Chen asked. "Who else is so sick?" Li Ruobing replied. "Okay." Wu Chen smiled and didn't say much. In fact, he knew that people had been following him from noon until now, but not Li Ruobing, but himself, including when he came out to talk to Lu Guangnian in Lao Pinzan. But the distance was very far, and the person watching would not hear the conversation, only see Wu Chen and Lu Guangnian talking alone, Lu Guangnian handing Wu Chen a cigarette, and other details. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Wu Chen knew who sent someone to follow him. Li Ruobing misunderstood. Then let her misunderstand. Soon, the Bentley Continental arrived at the entrance of the alley and stopped slowly. The road inside was not very good. The Bentley Continental was a coupe and the site was not high. Although there was a lifting platform, it was troublesome to drive in and out. "Just here, it's getting late. You go back and rest early, good night and sweet dreams." Wu Chen pushed open the car door, got out of the car, and walked into the alley. He went straight without looking back. Li Ruobing looked at Wu Chen who was walking into the alley from the windshield, and thought of something, suddenly lowered the car window, tilted her head, and shouted, "My dear." Acting again, for whom? Wu Chen turned around and looked at Li Ruobing in the car. Li Ruobing tilted her head and waved to Wu Chen again. Wu Chen frowned slightly, walked towards the Bentley, and walked outside the driver's door. "Come here." Li Ruobing hooked her fingers again as if she wanted to whisper. Wu Chen leaned over and got closer. Li Ruobing hooked Wu Chen's neck, leaned out half of her body from the car window, and kissed Wu Chen on the mouth. Chapter 38. Give liars a lesson that will never be forgotten. Wu Chen was stunned for a moment, but he immediately understood. Li Ruobing was acting for Ding Ruolong's people. She thought that the person who had been following her from day to night was sent by Ding Ruolong, so she suddenly decided to kiss him, so that the person following her could see it, and even hoped that they would take a picture with your phone and send it to Ding Ruolong. That bitch Ding Ruolong would be so mad. Certainly, Li Ruobing would not just kiss anyone just because she wanted someone to be angry. She could kiss Wu Chen because the value of Wu Chen in her heart at this moment had been raised to a certain level, which made her feel that kissing Wu Chen was not a loss. Wu Chen immediately felt Li Ruobing's jerky. This should be her first kiss. She had never kissed before, so she didn't understand how to do it. However, Wu Chen also clearly felt that Li Ruobing wanted to pretend that she knew it well. She didn't like to be vulnerable to others. Wu Chen was proficient. This led to a consequence. Wu Chen's mouth hurt. It took a full 10 seconds for Li Ruobing to let go of the hand hooking Wu Chen's neck. She breathed heavily and retracted into the car. After taking another deep breath, she pursed the corners of her mouth and said to Wu Chen, "Good night and sweet dreams." After looking at Li Ruobing for 3 seconds, he smiled and said, "Good dream, be careful on the way back, drive slowly." He turned around and left. In those 3 seconds just now, Wu Chen thought about a very important question: should he take down Li Ruobing today? That referred to the body. Although today's procedure was a method that Wu Chen had never tried before, Wu Chen was more than 90% sure that something would happen with Li Ruobing today. It was only past 7 o'clock in the evening, and there were still many hours. However, Wu Chen thought about it for a while and decided to forget it. Because he didn't want his relationship with Li Ruobing to be misplaced. It was a matter of who controlled whom. If he just wanted to get Li Ruobing's body, Wu Chen had done it too many times. But because he only wanted to get Li Ruobing's body at that time, even though the two had a relationship in the end, in Li Ruobing's view, she was not taken down by some man, but played with this man herself. There were even times when Li Ruobing directly transferred huge sums of money to Wu Chen's account afterward. It's an overnight fee. And the borrowing fee. It was not certain whether she could conceive a child, but she did give money first a few times. Although Li Ruobing had decided not to marry in this life, she did not say that she would not have children. She was a very independent woman. She had long thought that she should have a child and that she should choose an excellent gene for her future child. Once she became pregnant, the family would no longer be able to force her to marry Ding Ruolong. Although she might be completely separated from her family because of this, she would have a new free life. In general, Wu Chen took advantage of Li Ruobing's current predicament and her mentality of being hard-headed, and he detonated the time bomb inside Symphony Fashion in advance, allowing Ding Ruolong to get the product information in advance on July 7 and let Li Ruobing know about it. If such a problem occurred in business, Li Ruobing almost lost the possibility of winning the bet. At the same time, Wu Chen showed Li Ruobing his excellence and talent, let her see his own strength, and kept hinting at her, almost brainwashing her, making her understand that unless she really has another man and gets pregnant, otherwise, she would not be able to escape the fate of marrying Ding Ruolong. And Li Ruobing had long thought about not getting married and not being attached to men in the future, but she could have children. It was just in line with her psychology. That's how Wu Chen guided Li Ruobing step by step, and finally had a relationship with her. The body was indeed obtained. However, the identities of the two in this process were very problematic. Li Ruobing became a rich woman similar to, begging for a child with a lot of money, and Wu Chen, who was used by Li Ruobing to take revenge on her family, rebel against fate, get out of trouble, and meet her standards for excellent genes, a little boy. Now, Wu Chen was already a person with a future. So he wouldn't let this situation happen again. Today, he had shown Li Ruobing his uniqueness and strength, that's all. Before entering Li Ruobing's heart, using the layout to calculate her body would only make the situation worse. While Wu Chen was thinking, he walked into the alley. After walking 20 or 30 meters, he took out a tissue and wiped his mouth. There was Li Ruobing's lipstick and saliva. Wu Chen took out his mobile phone with a black screen again and took advantage of the light from the street lamp to shine a light on his mouth. Li Ruobing's kiss was really jerky. He arrived downstairs. Wu Chen turned his head to look left and right, then put one hand in his pocket, went in, and went upstairs. Lily, I'm so hungry, we haven't eaten dinner yet. Why don't we wait and go get something to eat? No way, we have to catch that liar. I don't believe he's still there. Don't go home. When he comes back, we'll hold him back, call the police and let the police catch him, saying he's a liar. He's definitely finished. But, I did it voluntarily. You're stupid. Is it voluntary? You won't say no. Besides, you were deceived. Can you just swallow this? But, actually yesterday was quite fun. You don't know how exciting it was yesterday, Mu Qianchen, are you a fool? How can you help a liar? You are so reconciled to a liar who is full of nonsense for the first time. Aren't you wronged? No. Aren't you sad? Not sad, what is there to be sad about? Then why are you calling me in such a hurry today? Are you still angry with me, and do you really think I arranged the person? Do you think I will cheat you like this? I just want to know his phone number. Forget it, Li, let's go eat first. Okay, I'm really hungry. I haven't eaten all day. Eat your head, don't be like a little fool. We have to wait for him to come back. 5th floor, in front of Wu Chen's house. Mu Qianchen and Wan Li sat on the steps of the corridor with their arms crossed, looking desperately waiting. In fact, Mu Qianchen wanted to leave a long time ago. She was really hungry. She called Wan Li in the morning but couldn't get through. Ever since she told her best friend that she spent the night at Wu Chen's house yesterday, Wan Li dragged her to kill him and waited from 1 o'clock in the afternoon until now. Mu Qianchen wanted to leave, but Wan Li refused. Naturally, she wanted to seek an explanation for her best friend and teach the liar a lesson that he would never forget. Boom! Suddenly there was a sound of heavy footsteps downstairs. Shish! Someone is coming up, maybe the liar is back. Wan Li hurriedly gestured and said in a low voice, while clenching the electric baton in her hand. Chapter 39. You should care more about yourself. In fact, Wu Chen had been standing at the corner of the stairs on the 4th floor for a while. His walking posture had been practiced, which was convenient for investigation and sneaking in. He would not make much noise at all. If he walked slowly enough, there would be no sound at all. After listening to the conversation between Mu Qianchen and Wan Li, he understood what was going on. The heavy footsteps were made by Wu Chen on purpose to remind them that he was back. Wu Chen continued to go upstairs. When he reached the corner of the stairs on the 4th floor, he stopped again, looked up at Mu Qianchen and Wan Li who had just stood up at the top of the stairs, smiled, and said, "You're here." It will give people a strange feeling. For example, Wu Chen not only knew Mu Qianchen but also Wan Li. Of course, he knew Wan Li, but in the 1,000-year reincarnation, his understanding of Wan Li was less than that of Mu Qianchen. In Wu Chen's many investigations, Wan Li was basically a supporting role. Because she looked average, according to Wu Chen's standard, she couldn't even reach 7 points after makeup, and the maximum was 6.5. However, because Wan Li had a billionaire father, she and Mu Qianchen were best friends, and she had a lot of ex-boyfriends, Wu Chen still has some information about her. Wu Chen's impression of her was actually not bad. Although Wan Li's private life was very chaotic, much more than Mu Qianchen's, that had nothing to do with Wu Chen. Though Wu Chen didn't want to sleep with her. In other respects, Wan Li was very good. She was really a good friend to Mu Qianchen. "That's him." Wan Li, who stood up, tilted her head and asked Mu Qianchen in a low voice. Yes, Mu Qianchen's expression was unnatural. A person with greasy hair and a pink face is not a good thing at first glance. "Hey, you wear such a good suit, where did you buy the counterfeit goods? Are you going to lie to some girl again? You bastard liar," Wan Li said, her voice becoming higher and higher, and directly scolded Wu Chen. Wu Chen glanced at the small electric baton in Wan Li's hand, continued to go upstairs with a smile, one step at a time, walked slowly, and said with a smile, "Since you think I'm a liar, you two little girls, are you not afraid that I will arrest you and do things to you? No matter what I say, I am still a grown man who is a head taller than you. You, don't scare us. Do you know who my father is? If you dare." Wan Li's words showed timidity. It was indeed ill-considered. Moreover, Wu Chen clearly saw that she was going upstairs step by step with an electric baton in her hand, so she was not afraid at all, which made her a little panicked. When facing trouble, the aura was very important. When Wu Chen went upstairs, he was calm and imposing. Although Wan Li was the daughter of a billionaire, because she was a girl and she was still young, she would definitely not be exposed to some means at home. No matter what her background was, she was just a girl who was still in high school and was in the period of rebellion. "Your father is Wan Zhanmen, so you don't need to tell me." Wu Chen cut off Wan Li's words with a light smile. "I know your family is rich, but no matter how rich you are, even distant water can't quench your thirst. Who else can? Will he fly over to save you?" Wu Chen said, showing a mouthful of small white teeth. Under the background of the dim light in the corridor, Wu Chen's smile made Wan Li's hairs stand up. What are you going to do? I warn you, stay away from us." Wan Li pulled Mu Qianchen back and gestured with the electric baton in the other hand. "I didn't ask you to come to me, you delivered yourself." Wu Chen grinned. He went up to the 5th step. And Wan Li had already pulled Mu Qianchen and retreated to the upward steps on the 5th floor as if Wu Chen was going to do something to them and force them to retreat upstairs. "You, don't come here. I'll call someone. I'm warning you, I've practiced it before. If I hit you with an electric baton, you'll die." Wan Li pulled Mu Qianchen behind her, blocking him with an electric baton. She stopped before finishing her sentence. Because he saw Wu Chen take out the key to the door. "Are you fighting wits with the air? I'm just going home. Look, I scared you," Wu Chen said while unlocking the door. At this moment, his back was facing Wan Li who was on a few steps. "I think, instead of caring about whether I'm a liar or not, you should care more about yourself. Wu Chen continued as he opened the door, do you really think that you are Hu Xiaowei's only girlfriend? Mu Qianchen exclaimed suddenly. Wan Li had already rushed to Wu Chen's back, raising her hand to stab Wu Chen's back of the neck with an electric baton. But she stopped suddenly, because Wu Chen mentioned a name, Hu Xiaowei. It's Wan Li's current boyfriend, the one who came back yesterday. Wu Chen opened the door, pushed the door open a little, then turned to look at Wan Li, who was stopped 1 meter away from him. Wan Li took 2 steps back in fright, and almost tripped over the stairs, but was held up by Mu Qianchen. Don't be so flustered. Wu Chen smiled. You, what did you just say about Hu Xiaowei? How do you know him? Wan Li asked in surprise. We all know that you, Miss Wan Li, change boyfriends more diligently than changing clothes. If you haven't had one for more than 3 months, we all know that something is up. So think, if you weren't rich and young, and you were lucky, who would date you? Are you? Wan Li almost scolded because Wu Chen's words were harsh. Hu Xiaowei returned to Donghai 4 days ago. Wu Chen didn't let Wan Li say all the dirty words and said with some teasing in his light smile, he first went to meet his girlfriend who lives in Unit 201, Unit 3, Number 19, Fuyuan Road. Friend, I went to the KTV bathing center with a few cronies for 2 days. Yesterday he ran out of money, so he suddenly went to find you at night. You fart. You, why don't you make a phone call and ask? How long have you been here with Qianchen? Do you think he is at home now? Do you think he will find another girlfriend to play with after you leave? Before you parted this time, he asked you for money again, right? A series of questions. It could be called soul torture. In fact, Wu Chen didn't know whether Hu Xiaowei would play again after Wan Li left today, but it was very likely. Because it used to be like this. Hu Xiaowei was just a thug who had no serious job and was full of lies to catch rich girls. You wait for me, you dare to say bad things about Xiaowei. Qianchen, look, I will expose his lies now and let you know that he is a big liar who can talk nonsense. Wan Li threw the baton to Mu Qianchen. She quickly took out the mobile phone from the bag, dialed Hu Xiaowei's number, and turned on the speakers. Hello, Xiaowei, are you at home? Wan Li asked. The home she mentioned meant the high-end apartment where she lived alone. Yes, baby, are you coming back? What do you want to eat? I'll go downstairs and buy it for you now. A gentle and doting male voice came from the phone. Xiaowei is so good, I won't go back. I'm with Qianchen, Wan Li said while giving Wu Chen a provocative look, and then said softly to the phone, Xiaowei, go to the bedroom and take a look at the dressing table. There are 10,000 yuan in the drawer, please tell me the serial number of the first one. 10,000 yuan. Is there any in the drawer? Hu Xiaowei's voice suddenly became strange. Yes, go and have a look. Come on, I made a bet with Qianchen, Wan Li said. Well, I'm in the toilet, you have to wait a while. Hu Xiaowei's words made Wan Li's face change. She was not stupid either. Lying. Hu Xiaowei, you're not at home. How dare you lie to me? What kind of fox are you fooling around with? Wan Li scolded and questioned directly. Beep beep. The other person hung up directly. Chapter 40. Is it over? Dare hang up on me. Call. Wan Li almost stared at the phone with her eyes popping out, with an expression of wanting to crush the phone. He probably won't contact you again. Wu Chen said. Wan Li didn't seem to hear what Wu Chen said. She gritted her teeth again, muttering obscenities, and quickly dialed Hu Xiaowei's number again. I'm sorry, the number you dialed is temporarily unavailable. The call was immediately blocked. It was blocked. Hu Xiaowei was a professional in the matter of being a bad guy. He knew Wan Li's eldest lady's temper, and if she found something wrong, she will immediately withdraw and hide away. Otherwise, if Wan Li took revenge, the consequences would be extremely serious. Listening to the sweet notification tone on the phone, Wan Li's face turned green, and she almost dropped the phone. She already understood that what Wu Chen said was true, and Hu Xiaowei was really not at home, so he must have taken her money to find another girlfriend of his. Bastard. Wan Li gritted her teeth, frantically waved her hands toward the air in front of her, and then hurried downstairs with a murderous look. Walking very quickly, she crossed 2 stairs in 1 step and almost ran. Naturally, she wanted to settle accounts with Hu Xiaowei. She seemed to have forgotten that she came here today to settle accounts with Wu Chen and help her best friend get justice. She only thought about Hu Xiaowei and wanted to tear him apart. She forgot about Mu Qianchen, who was outside Wu Chen's house. One could see how angry she was. In fact, if it was just simple cheating, Wanli would not be so angry. She would be very happy to part. Mainly because of what Wu Chen said before. Let Wanli understand that it wasn't her boyfriend who changed his mind, but that Hu Xiaowei came for her money from the very beginning, using her as a cash machine, eating and drinking with his friends, and raising other women. The sound of Wanli's hasty footsteps quickly faded away. Mu Qianchen looked a little embarrassed. She didn't come here today to find trouble. It was Wanli who forced her to come here. Now she was facing Wu Chen alone, and she didn't know what to say. "I'll go," Mu Qianchen pointed down the stairs, hesitating, as if she still wanted to explain something to Wu Chen, but she was also eager to catch up with her best friend, fearing accidents. "Go, I understand." Wu Chen smiled without waiting for Mu Qianchen to finish speaking. A strange feeling suddenly appeared in Mu Qianchen's heart. Because Wu Chen said, "I understand," without asking her to explain, this gave Mu Qianchen a wonderful feeling of, "He understands me." Mu Qianchen had always been responsible for her actions. She wasn't the kind of girl who wanted something from Wu Chen after giving it to Wu Chen for the first time. Mu Qianchen never believed Wu Chen's so-called reincarnation on the same day. She just guessed wrong about Wu Chen's identity and thought it was arranged by Wanli, but this was her unilateral guess. Wu Chen never said who sent him. Last night, it was their love and wish. Mu Qianchen never thought of making trouble for Wu Chen, but just wanted to get in touch with Wu Chen. Because it's so interesting to be with Wu Chen. "Then I'll go." Mu Qianchen smiled, took 2 steps forward, tiptoed, and kissed Wu Chen on the cheek, then turned and ran downstairs, chasing Wanli. At this time, there was another sound of footsteps downstairs. As soon as Mu Qianchen reached the 4.5 floors, she saw Wanli running up again. The first time she saw Wu Chen, she shouted, "Which address is it again? Say it again." Wu Chen said it once before, but she did not remember. Unit 3, Unit 201, Number 19, Fuyuan Road. Wu Chen said, although Wanli scolded him before, Wu Chen just likes to help others so much, or to put it another way, watching the excitement was great. "Okay, what the hell?" Wanli cursed and turned around and ran downstairs again, still full of murderous intent, but this time, she didn't forget Mu Qianchen. She dragged Mu Qianchen and ran down together. Wu Chen was at the door on the 5th floor, listening to the footsteps below gradually receding until they disappeared. "Little girl." Wu Chen sighed with a smile and went home to close the door. After entering the room, he turned on the light first. Wu Chen changed his slippers, threw his suit jacket on the armrest of the chair, walked to the sofa and sat down, slumped down very relaxedly, and let out a long breath. The first day of a new life was wonderful and fulfilling. Wu Chen raised his head and thought for a while, then took out his mobile phone, and typed with one hand, typing extremely fast. Mu Qianchen was dragged by Wanli and ran out of the apartment building, her shoes almost flew away. "Slow down, son of a bitch." Mu Qianchen yelled. "Hurry up, Qianchen, follow me to catch that fucker. By the way, give me the electric baton." The two ran to the side of the street outside the alley. Just as a taxi passed by, Wanli reached out to stop it, and the two got into the car. Wanli quickly reported the address to the driver, then took out her mobile phone and called someone. With Wanli's character, she would kill him alone. However, because Wu Chen had scared her before, she had a long memory and decided to call a group of people. Mu Qianchen turned her head to look at Wanli, who was calling for someone. Her eyes were a little worried, but she was not afraid of anything else. She was afraid that Hu Xiaowei would be caught, and with Wanli's temper, she might even kill him. Mu Qianchen suddenly seemed to remember something. She turned her head and looked towards the rear window, and looked at the alley entrance that was already far away from the rear window. She forgot to ask Wu Chen's contact information again. Thump! Mu Qianchen's cell phone vibrated suddenly. She picked it up and saw that it was a text message from an unfamiliar number. The content was only 5 words. "This is my number." Blinking her eyes, Mu Qianchen was taken aback for a moment, then understood. She smiled, and added a name to the unknown number, Wu Chen. Just half an hour after Mu Qianchen and Wan Li left, Wu Chen went downstairs again. He changed clothes and put on his college tracksuit. "It's for exercise." Exercise. Wu Chen's physical fitness was very good. Although he looked thin, his body was very healthy. Normally, he didn't need special exercise to maintain his figure, and he could be in a good state every day. But Wu Chen didn't want his abilities to be wasted. All-in-one ability meant literally referring to physical abilities, such as fighting. He had practiced fighting, and now he had very comprehensive fighting skills and a terrifying sense of reaction. As far as his current physical condition was concerned, 10 or 8 people might not be able to beat him together. He could rely on flexible steps and body swings to avoid the opponent's attack, just like a professional boxer. When an ordinary person faced a professional boxer could even evade there without moving his feet. There was no way for an ordinary person to hit a professional boxer on the head by swaying to avoid the attack. Wu Chen could also do this, and as long as he made a move, it was basically impossible for the opponent to dodge. Even in the face of a group of people, as long as he didn't get completely surrounded and he paid attention to his footwork to dodge, then no matter how many people there were, as long as he has enough physical strength, he could solve them all one by one. However, no matter how strong his current fighting ability was, it was still limited by his physical fitness. In reincarnation, only thinking, memory, knowledge, and consciousness could accumulate, and the body would be completely reset. Therefore, Wu Chen decided to start exercising from today. Just to make yourself stronger. Soon, after more than 2 hours. After 10 o'clock in the middle of the night, Wu Chen, who was covered in sweat, ran back to the alley, and gradually slowed down, changing from running to walking. His whole body was drenched in sweat, and his clothes were already stuck to his body, but he felt very comfortable. He didn't know if he would feel leg pain when he woke up tomorrow, and it didn't matter, as long as he could walk. Before entering the unit building, Wu Chen suddenly slowed down, frowned slightly, and then walked in. He realized that someone was still staring at him and had been following him. It was a bit annoying. Because Wu Chen knew who sent someone to follow him, so he didn't worry that the other party would threaten him. He had other purposes. He thought that after the other party knew where his home was, it would be over. Now it's kind of endless. When he arrived home, Wu Chen went to take a shower first, and after coming out of the bathroom wearing a bathrobe, he picked up his mobile phone and walked to the window, looked into the alley outside, and dialed a number. "Hello." The other party's voice was very cold. "You sent someone to follow me for a day, is it still not over?" Wu Chen asked quietly. Thank you for watching. Continue exploring the fascinating world of Chinese novels with us. Hit that subscribe button on Chinese Novel Audio Wave to stay updated with our latest stories. And never miss out on a great listen.